Gu Jiu walked ahead, feeling a strange tingle at the back of her neck. Yi Jiu was like a silent shadow, following quietly behind without uttering a word, simply staring at her, which felt rather unnerving. "Why don't you walk beside me?" If he walked next to her, he would have to watch the path instead of her, wouldn't he? All right. Yi Jiu agreed at once, striding over to walk shoulder to shoulder with Gu Jiu. He was so tall. Gu Jiu glanced at the man beside her. He stood a full head taller than her. Wait a second. Had he just smiled? Gu Jiu hadn't misread him. Yi Jiu really was smiling. He had done it on purpose. This time Gu Jiu had been the one to invite him to walk beside her. He hadn't initiated anything at all. Gu Jiu stared again and again. The faint curve at the corner of Yi Jiu's mouth was unmistakable. He was definitely smiling. He had done it on purpose. Gritting her teeth, Gu Jiu said, "Did you do that on purpose?" "HM? What do you mean, done it on purpose?" Yi Jiu feigned ignorance. Yet his eyes glinted with obvious amusement. Bathed in sunlight, his features looked even more strikingly handsome. Only Gu Jiu got to witness this side of him. TCH, what a charming man, acting like this out in broad daylight. How shameless. Pulling herself together, Gu Jiu's inner thoughts showed faintly on her face. She rolled her eyes straight at Yi Jiu. "You were creeping behind me staring like that. Don't tell me that wasn't intentional." The smile vanished from Yi Jiu's face. He stared at Gu Jiu, inwardly exasperated. Why was she so oblivious to his feelings? Creeping like a ghost? Really? All he had been doing was looking at her with genuine affection. He had only gazed a little longer. How could that be compared to a ghost? Yi Jiu took several deep breaths to calm himself. I only looked a little longer. It's hardly the same as being a ghost. Gu Jiu fell silent for a moment. How would you feel if someone kept staring at your back non-stop? Yi Jiu smiled faintly, making a mental note to adjust his approach. This way of acting was too likely to leave a bad impression. I'll be more careful. I won't stare for quite so long next time. Gu Jiu stared in disbelief. There's going to be a next time? A normal person would say they wouldn't do it at all. Why had he said he wouldn't stare so long? That hardly sounded right. Yi Jiu nodded. I can't promise not to look. I meant what I said about liking you. When you care for someone, you constantly want to lay eyes on them. When you're right in front of me, it's only natural that I'll look. There will definitely be other times. Yi Jiu spoke with total sincerity. He might adjust his ways, but he would never play manipulative mind games. His candid words brought a flush to Gu Jiu's cheeks, and she quickened her pace as she walked. To have such a good-looking young man speak to her with such whole-hearted honesty, she had no idea how others might react. But it was more than she could handle. She needed to get away fast before she lost her composure entirely. Sincerity truly was a powerful charm. That tactic had worked perfectly. Seeing Gu Jiu hurry forward, Yi Jiu hurried after her. Comrade Gu, slow down. Watch your step. Gu Jiu paid him no mind, staring at the ground as she walked, trying to shake him off. But she overestimated her own stamina and underestimated how long his legs were. Soon Gu Jiu was panting, sweat dripping down her temples. While Yi Jiu followed behind her completely at ease, not even out of breath. She could push herself no further and stopped to rest. Glancing up to see Yi Jiu not breaking a sweat at all, she felt utterly helpless. What had she even been trying to accomplish? She had worn herself out completely, while he was perfectly fine. All that fuss for nothing. Gu Jiu gave up. Since he was the one who had confessed his feelings, she would let him do as he pleased. She would keep to her own rhythm and not let him rattle her. In other words, let things unfold as they may. Seeing how worn out Gu Jiu was, Yi Jiu felt a twinge of remorse. He had known her health was poor, yet he had still teased her. He reached out to take her woven basket to lighten her load, but Gu Jiu held tight to its shoulder straps and would not let him take it. Meeting her gaze, Yi Jiu explained, "You look exhausted. Let me carry your basket for you so you can rest easier." Gu Jiu did not know whether to praise him or reproach him. After all, who had caused her to become so worn out in the first place? Still, she did not refuse. If he wanted to carry it, so be it. It would be nice to go without the weight on her back. After resting for a while, Gu Jiu stood up and continued onward. Yi Jiu followed quietly beside her, no longer trying to tease her. He had known her health was poor in theory, but he had never truly grasped how frail she was until today. Watching her grow sweaty and winded after merely walking a little faster drove the reality home. He would need to work harder to build up resources for their future. His future wife needed plenty of care and good nourishment. A new goal ignited inside Yu Jiyu, filling him with determination. Gu Jiyu walked ahead. Though she carried nothing, she moved more slowly than she had at the start, gradually regaining her breath. She glanced over at Yu Jiyu beside her, holding her woven basket. He walked silently, casting occasional worried glances her way. There was no discontent or distaste in his expression, only genuine concern. Gu Jiyu found herself thinking he was actually quite decent. She had realized what she was doing shortly after she had quickened her pace. She had meant to slow down, yet she had also wanted to test Yu Jiyu's true feelings. In all her memories from both her past and present lives, no one besides her own family had ever confessed affection for her. Most people shied away, afraid they would be held responsible if her poor health led to trouble. She had intentionally let him witness her physical limits. If he could not accept them, it was better he gave up early, rather than wasting both of their time. Judging by his reaction, he did not seem bothered by her poor health at all. He had shown no negative feelings whatsoever. A small spark of joy stirred inside Gu Jiyu. Any girl would feel pleased to have a handsome young man like him like her despite her health struggles. She was only human after all. Points went up for Yu Jiyu in her mind. One more point for his good looks, another point, then another and another. At the end of the day, his appearance won him plenty of favor. Tall and strikingly handsome, that description fit Yu Jiyu perfectly, though she had no real idea what the legendary Panin had looked like. Gu Jiyu admitted she was shallow. She was drawn to good-looking people, especially someone as exceptionally handsome as Yu Jiyu. Since she herself was quite pretty in this life, her preference for attractive partners felt perfectly reasonable. As they walked, a hand stretched out toward her, holding 2 white rabbit candies. When she did not take them, the hand moved a little closer. "Go on, take them." Yu Jiyu's fingers were long and slender, his fingertips bearing a thin layer of calluses. The 2 candies resting in his palm made for an oddly gentle sight. "Take them. You looked unwell a moment ago. Have some candy to keep your blood sugar from dropping." His tone was calm and gentle, laced with clear concern. Gu Jiyu could not imagine him ever speaking harshly to a young woman. "Thank you." Gu Jiyu took the candies from his palm, unwrapped one, and popped it into her mouth. The candy tasted sweeter than usual today. Having never been in a relationship across 2 lifetimes, Gu Jiyu had always longed for a sweet romance. In her past life, she had been too busy surviving. In this life, she focused on tending to her fragile body. She had never even held a boy's hand. Except for Gu Jijin, of course. Seeing Gu Jiyu accept and eat the candy, Yu Jiyu's heart swelled with delight. She had accepted something he had given her. Surely that meant she felt some fondness for him. Yet when his fingertips had brushed against hers, he had felt how cold her hands were, even in June. He felt sorry for her, wondering how uncomfortable she must be day to day. He would have to find ways to nourish her. Since they were in the mountains, perhaps he could catch a pheasant to make soup for her. His cooking skills were passable, more or less. He hoped she would like it. Gu Jiyu had no idea what he was thinking. The 2 continued forward, the atmosphere strangely peaceful. Yu Jiyu walked slightly ahead, now and then warning her to watch her footing. Gu Jiyu followed behind, gazing at his tall, broad back. A quiet sense of safety settled over her heart, different from the comfort given by her family. She had lived to 25 in her previous life. How could she feel she could rely on a 20-year-old boy who was younger than her? She shook her head, chasing stray, inappropriate thoughts from her mind. She needed to stay level-headed. They eventually reached the foot of the mountain. Yu Jiyu looked at her, waiting for her to choose which path to take. Gu Jiyu scanned her surroundings and picked a different route from the one she had taken on her last trip into the hills. As soon as she stepped forward, Yu Jiyu caught her wrist. "I'll go first." Yu Jiyu pulled a wood-cutting knife out of his basket and led the way. Chopping away low, hanging shrubs and tangled branches to clear a narrow path for Gu Jiyu to follow. "Stick to the path I've made. Be careful not to get scratched." Gu Jiyu walked slowly behind him, carrying her small hoe. Whenever she spotted wild vegetables, she dug them up and dropped them into Yu Jiyu's basket. Once they had passed the outer edge of the woods, she glanced at her watch. They had made much better progress than on her last trip alone. Then her expression shifted. "Wait." At Gu Jiyu's call, Yu Jiyu froze mid-swing with his knife raised. Gu Jiyu stepped forward, carefully plucked a clump of mistletoe, and placed it in the basket. She then turned to Yu Jiyu. "How about I walk in front instead?" Yu Jiyu did not immediately agree. He studied her. I wanted to clear the path for you. Is it because of that plant you just picked? Gu Jiu nodded. That's mistletoe. It's medicinal herb. I came up the mountain to gather herbs and dig wild vegetables. So it was medicinal. He knew nothing about plants like that. Still, he disliked the idea of her walking ahead where she might get hurt. I can't tell which plants are useful. It would be inconvenient for you to stay behind, but I would worry if you went in front. Let's walk side by side. You watch for herbs and vegetables, and whenever there's nothing to collect, I'll cut away the blocking branches and vines. Gu Jiu thought that sounded reasonable. They traveled a little further, where wild vegetables grew plentifully, dotted with scattered medicinal plants. Gu Jiu stopped Yu Jiu. Let's stop here. Don't go deeper into the woods. It's too risky. Yu Jiu had only come along for Gu Jiu's sake, so naturally he would follow her wish. He handed her small woven basket back to her. Seeing plenty of wild vegetables nearby, he squatted down to help dig them up. Wild vegetables made good food. He still needed to build up resources for their future. Eating more wild vegetables was healthy. While Yu Jiu worked diligently digging vegetables, Gu Jiu took the chance to complete her daily system check. In. System sign in. Ding. Sign in successful. Items have been stored in system space. Gu Jiu glanced into her system space. Perfect. She now had gifts ready to give away. Her rewards were 1 pair of bright red quilt covers, 2 tubes of vanishing cream, 1 pair of red double happiness pillowcases, 5 gene of dried hazel mushrooms, 5 gene of dried wood ear mushrooms, 10 gene each of walnuts, pine nuts, and hazelnuts, 2 bottles of linden honey, 5 red sausages, 130-year old ginseng root, 1 large size banknote, and 1 gene of grain coupons. She had gifts for her elder brother and special goods to send home to her family. This system was truly wonderful. After checking her space, Gu Jiu threw herself into digging wild vegetables and collecting every medicinal herb she found. Yu Jiu kept an eye on her as she worked and struck up conversation. Comrade Gu, I didn't know you knew so much about medicinal herbs. Focused on digging, Gu Jiu replied casually. I've been unwell for a long time. I've taken plenty of medicine. So I've learned to recognize many herbs. I thought they might come in handy someday. Long-term illness had taught her medicine. Yu Jiu pressed his lips together and stopped working, mentally chiding himself. Why had he said that? He was usually good at talking to people. Gu Jiu noticed he had fallen still. She looked up and saw him staring at the ground, filled with regret. Understanding dawned on her. It's all right, Comrade Yi. It's just the truth. I'm not upset about it, so you don't need to feel bad. Yu Jiu did not know what to say. He had tried to make conversation and accidentally touched on a painful subject. And now she was the one comforting him. Had being smitten really dulled his wits? Where had he even gotten that phrase from, anyway? He pushed the confusing thought aside. Do you gather these herbs to sell at the purchasing station? Gu Jiu shook her head. My strength is limited. I cannot gather enough herbs to make selling them worthwhile. That made sense. Judging by her circumstances, she had no need to earn money selling herbs. Sunlight filtered through the tree leaves and fell across Gu Jiu's profile, gilding her features as she concentrated on her work. Are you gathering them for your own use? You could teach me. I could bring herbs back for you when I come up the mountain later. Surprise flickered across Gu Jiu's face, and she shook her head again. There are far too many kinds of medicinal herbs. You cannot learn all of them in a short time, even if I taught you. Yu Jiu would not give up. I can learn slowly. I will bring back whatever I find. Gu Jiu felt unsure how to respond. Comrade Yi, you don't have to do this. I can come gather herbs myself whenever I have spare time. You don't need to push yourself to learn all this. It is no burden for me. Yu Jiu knelt down beside her. I mean what I said about liking you. I want to draw closer to you and look after you. Learning about herbs is my own wish. Please don't feel pressured. I like you and I want to do practical things for you that I am capable of. Whether or not you grow to return my feelings in the future, my wish to care for you is genuine right now. Just accept my care within what you are comfortable with. I don't want this to weigh on you. You are still young. Liking you is my own affair. I simply want to treat you well and earn the chance to stand beside you when you are older. He watched pink creep across Gu Jiu's cheeks, spreading all the way to the tips of her ears, and continued speaking. Until we are in a formal relationship, I will not bring you any trouble or hardship. You can go on living exactly as you have, doing whatever you wish. So, will you teach me about medicinal herbs? Gu Jiu's heart raced. How was she supposed to stay composed hearing words like these? She bit back her flustered thoughts and stared at the ground. Face burning bright red, she stammered, If you really want to learn, fine. I'll lend you a book when we get back. You can come ask me whenever you don't understand something." A brilliant smile spread across Yujiyu's face. His peach blossom eyes sparkled, and the small mole beneath his eye softened in the sunlight. His genuine joy was palpable, and Gujiyu found herself smiling back. She thought that whatever happened, his words were sincere in this moment. His fondness for her was real, and so was his happiness. Still, Gujiyu held firm to her resolve. Even if she developed feelings for him, she would not enter a relationship with him before she turned 18. Once their conversation ended, the two fell quiet and kept working. Time passed quickly with company. Gujiyu was busy digging up a patch of polygonatum. It's getting late. We ought to head back." Gujiyu snapped out of her focus and glanced at her watch. It was 4:30. She hurried to finish her task. Just a moment, almost done. Her hands kept moving, yet a thought crossed her mind. He had called her Au so naturally, as if he had used that nickname for her all along. Soon she had fully unearthed the herb and placed it in her basket. She exhaled and stood up quickly. Bad idea. Her vision swam with black spots and her body swayed. Before she could steady herself, a pair of hands caught her by the arms. After a few moments, the blackness faded from her sight. I squatted too long. My blood circulation got cut off. I have to be more careful next time, she told herself. She pulled a small paper packet of medicine from her pocket and popped the pills into her mouth. Before she could bend to get water, Yiziu held his canteen out toward her. Once she had swallowed her medicine, he took the canteen back and slung it over his own shoulder. Seeing how pale she looked, Yiziu remained worried. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I just sat crouched for too long." Gujiyu glanced regretfully at the herbs still left growing on the ground. So many are still left unharvested. Yijiyu hefted both baskets onto his back. "Let's go. We can come back another day." That was fair. They had gathered a great deal today, more than enough herbs for her own use for quite a while. It was Yijiyu who had first led her to this patch. Earlier in the afternoon, while his basket was already filling up, Yijiyu had spotted pheasant tracks. Seeing Gujiyu occupied with digging herbs, he had followed the trail, hoping to catch one. He had found no pheasants, but he had come across a patch of unfamiliar plants. Not knowing what they were, he had called Gujiyu over to identify them. That was how they had ended up where they were now. When Gujiyu saw the patch, she had been delighted. They were not extremely rare precious herbs, but there was plenty of polygonatum, mixed with scattered Solomon's seal. She had even found several buplurum plants. She had dug happily, like a little mouse that had stumbled upon a rice storehouse. After accepting he would not catch a pheasant, Yijiu had returned to watch her work. After observing for a while, he had even managed to dig up a few intact herbs himself. The two set off on the road back home, Yijiu carrying both baskets and all their tools while Gujiu walked empty-handed beside him. Even without a load, she tired more easily than he did. Every so often he would glance over to check whether she needed any help. On their way back, they passed through the village and ran into several locals. When they saw Gujiu walking together with Yijiu, some curious villagers came over to ask a few questions. Yijiu claimed that the two of them had run into each other on their way down the mountain. He had noticed Gujiu struggling under the weight of her load and had given her a hand. Whether others believed it or not hardly mattered. No one had seen them set off up the mountain, so they could tell the story however they liked. Listening to Yijiu's account and seeing how pale Gujiu looked, the villagers readily accepted the explanation. Still, they began to question why Gujiu had not returned the previous night. Gujiu fended them off by saying the Public Security Bureau had ordered the details not to be spread around. Back at the educated youth compound, before they even reached the door of her room, Jin-John hurried over. "Brother Yi, where have you been? I came back from work and couldn't find you anywhere." As Jin-John spoke, he reached for the basket slung over Yijiu's shoulder. Then he spotted Gujiu standing nearby, and the curiosity in his eyes was almost palpable. "The two of you went up the mountain together. What on earth had happened? Had Brother Yi really lost his self-control and made advances toward educated youth Gu?" He shot Gujiu a look of exasperation, as if to say, "How could you be so foolish? Why can't you keep your distance from this crafty man? You're still so young." Gujiu could read exactly what was going through Jin-John's mind. She knew that look well, for it was much the same expression she wore when she mentally teased other people. Empty out all those wild thoughts in your head. We just happened to cross paths up on the mountain. Yi passed his basket over to Qin. Didn't you say last time that the wild vegetables educated youth picked tasted good? I had some free time today, so I went up the mountain to gather some. Qin took the basket, eyeing him with obvious doubt. He was not entirely convinced. Full of misgivings, Qin turned his gaze toward Gu Jiyu. It's true, Gu Jiyu nodded, confirming Yi story. Only then did Qin let out a sigh of relief. But he had sighed too soon. He turned his head and met Yiyu's icy stare that seemed to warn, "Do you want to get into trouble?" A shiver ran down Qin's spine. He gave Yiyu an ingratiating grin, grabbed the basket, and hurried away. He looked just like a big dog that had gotten itself into mischief. Watching Qin's hasty retreat, Gu Jiyu wore an indulgent expression. What a lively, silly boy. Once Qin was gone, Yiyu turned to speak to Gu Jiyu, only to catch that strange fond smile on her face. He had seen that very same smile before on his grandmother. And yet Qin was actually 2 years older than Gu Jiyu. Pushing that odd thought aside, Yiyu lifted Gu Jiyu's basket for her. Let me carry this back for you. It's getting late. You ought to get something to eat. Gu Jiyu did not refuse. She saw no harm in letting him help. After all, he was her first suitor. She would soon turn 16, and in a year and a half she would be 18, practically 20 if you rounded the numbers. It was only reasonable to observe how sincere her suitor was. Though her body was young, Gu Jiyu carried the mind of a modern adult woman shaped by the internet. In her eyes, Yiyu was an attractive young man who fit her preferences in age, build, and appearance. She still needed to learn more about his true personality and family background, yet he would certainly make for an interesting romantic prospect. Still, this was the 1970s. Even holding hands was widely expected to lead straight to marriage. Thinking about casual courtship would be wildly inappropriate under local social norms. Since Gu Jiyu would not reach the age of 18 for another year or more, she could use this time to figure out whether Yiyu would make a suitable marriage partner. If he measured up, she could pursue the relationship. If not, she could draw back in good time. There was no need for her to rush. Ever since she had arrived in this era and obtained a check-in system, Gu Jiyu had mapped out a plan for her future. With the system supporting her, she had no need to worry about making ends meet, and her physical condition could gradually improve. She could take life at a relaxed pace. Freed from the pressure to scrape by, she could shape her future without being driven solely by income. She was 16 now. When the college entrance examination was reinstated in 1977, she would be 23. 4 years of university would be followed by an easy job. She hoped to meet someone she liked, get married, raise a lovely child, and live out a quiet, ordinary life. She was just an ordinary person with no grand ambitions. In her past life, she had been nothing more than an office worker. Unlike heroines in novels who crossed over and went on to catch spies or make extraordinary breakthroughs in specialized fields, she simply longed for quiet happiness. Still, her life might not turn out to be so uneventful. She did possess a sharp mind, so she might yet accomplish something worthwhile. Besides, were human traffickers some fixed plot element for every time traveler? How had she ended up running into them? Gu Jiyu thought it over and decided to let events unfold naturally. Since she was here, she might as well make the best of it. From that point onward, she kept to her usual daily rhythm. Yet little by little, something shifted in her life. Firewood would appear outside her door each morning, sometimes with a flower tucked among it or a piece of candy laid beside it. Medicinal herbs would be left on her windowsill in the evenings. A certain young man would show up in his spare time with a book to study herbal medicine. And she would notice a figure following behind her whenever she went to the commune. Yiyu was weaving himself into her life gently and quietly. True to his word, he took great care to ensure no one else detected any special bond between them, so he would not bring trouble down on her. Qin, however, watched their interactions with growing suspicion. Living right next door to Yiyu and spending much of each day working alongside him, Qin could hardly miss all the odd little changes in Yiyu's behavior. After catching Yiyu giving Gu Jiyu yet another meaningful glance, Qin drew a sharp warning. "If you keep staring at me like I'm a criminal, I am going to take action," Yiyu said coldly. "I'm just afraid you'll end up making a terrible mistake." Qin flinched and dropped his gaze, going back to his work. Yiyu ignored him. Meng Yuan wandered over. Qin, what are you whispering about with Yu? Something about soil? Are the two of you planning to plant something? Qin shot a quick look at Yu and laughed it off. Nothing much. I was just saying how hard the ground is to dig today. It really is tough, Meng Yuan shook his sore arms. Probably because we haven't had much rain lately. Before the morning was over, he already felt as worn out as if he had labored a full day. Qin was about to reply when a commotion broke out in the distance. Immediately afterwards, the village loudspeaker crackled to life. Pop pop. Hello, hello. All team members, attention. Drop whatever work you have in your hands and head over to the threshing ground right away. I repeat, don't dawdle. Get yourselves over to the threshing ground at once. Gujiu. Yelena. The two of you must come. Move quickly, don't hang about. Qin looked thoroughly confused. What does dawdle and act foolishly even mean? Meng Yuan gave him a solid slap on the back that nearly sent him stumbling. Is that really what you're focused on? How often do you hear that loudspeaker call everyone to the threshing ground? Something important must have happened. Qin's eyes widened. Oh, right. Let's hurry over and find out. Meng Yuan called for Yu, only to see he had already set off. He grabbed Qin's arm and hurried after him. They specifically called for educated youth Gu and educated youth Yu. I wonder what this is all about. As Qin jogged along, he persisted, but seriously, what does that phrase mean? Meng Yuan was speechless. Could he not save his questions for later? Besides, he had no easy way to explain it anyway. When they reached the threshing ground, a large crowd had already gathered. The brigade cadres had not yet arrived. Of the two young women summoned, only Yelena was present. Gujiu was still missing. Villagers murmured among themselves, speculating about the emergency. Since Gujiu and Yelena had been named explicitly, many wondered whether the two young women had gotten themselves into trouble. Some crowded around Yelena to ask questions, but she had no answers to give, so they drifted away again. Yelena had her own guess. The only matter that would concern both her and Gujiu was the incident in the county town. Still, since Gujiu was not there, she kept her thoughts to herself, afraid of spreading misinformation. Gujiu had been cutting pigweed some distance from the village, so she could barely make out the loudspeaker. It was Doggy, returning with his load of pigweed, who ran to fetch her. A few minutes later, Gujiu arrived at the threshing ground. Yelena had been watching for her and hurried over the moment she appeared. Yelena took Gujiu's hand and spoke quietly as they walked. Ayu, do you know what this is about? They called specifically for both of us. Could it have something to do with what happened in the county town last time? I'm not sure. We'll find out soon enough. The two walked to the front under the curious stares of the entire brigade. Shortly afterwards, the party branch secretary arrived, accompanied by several public security officers. At the sight of the police, murmurs swelled and every eye turned toward Gujiu and Yelena. Gujiu paid no mind to all the attention. The instant she spotted the officers, she knew exactly what this gathering was for. Yelena grew excited. Ayu, look. It's Captain Zhao and the others. I remember them saying there would be a reward for catching the human traffickers. This must be it. Gujiu watched the men step forward. It might well be. Gujiu stood calmly waiting. Suddenly she felt many of the stares directed at her fade away. She glanced back and saw Gujiu standing right behind her, shielding her from most of the crowd's gazes. When their eyes met, he smiled. He knew she could brush off other people's scrutiny, yet he wanted to spare her from having to endure it. Being unaffected did not mean she should have to tolerate unpleasant stares. Gujiu smiled back and nodded her thanks, then quickly faced forward again. Truly, Comrade Yi smiled so often around her, and every smile was quite attractive. She almost suspected he knew how susceptible she was to good-looking men. His little gestures felt almost like deliberate charm. Seeing her reaction, Gujiu's smile deepened. Standing nearby, Qin could barely watch. Brother Yi, hold back a little. That smile is getting far too unrestrained. At Qin's remark, Gujiu's smile vanished in an instant. His sharp gaze cut toward Qin. Reacting dramatically, Qin clutched his chest with a mournful expression. Brother Yi, has our bond grown so weak? Gujiu ignored his theatrics and said flatly, your heart is on your left side. You're holding the wrong place. Is it? Qin looked down and realized his hand was indeed resting over his right chest. Cling, cling, cling. The sound of the party branch secretary's gong cut him off. The crowd fell completely silent, all eyes fixed on the brigade cadres standing at the front. Then the secretary's loud voice boomed out. Everyone, quiet down. We've called you all here today because we have good news. Yan Weimin took over, gesturing toward the public security officers beside him. These comrades are from the County Public Security Bureau. They have come here today to present awards to educated youth Gu Jiyu and educated youth Yulina. A reward? For 2 young female educated youth? A murmur rippled through the crowd. What kind of reward would they give to 2 young women? Just look at them, so slight and delicate. Why would public security officers come to give them rewards? Could there have been some mistake? Others disagreed. There are quite a few police officers here. They wouldn't get something like this wrong. Remember? More than half a month ago, educated youth Gu and educated youth Yu did not come back from the county seat. The brigade leader said they had helped the Public Security Bureau and had been asked to stay behind. This must be what he was talking about. Really? I thought the brigade leaders were covering for some trouble they had gotten into. I didn't believe it at the time. Who could have imagined it was all true? Clang clang. The gong rang twice more. Keep your voices down. Stop chattering, the secretary called out. Educated youth Gu and educated youth Yu, come up to the front. These public security comrades are here to give you your awards. Hand in hand, Gu Jiyu and Yulina stepped up beside the secretary, facing the whole brigade. Even Gu Jiyu felt a flicker of nervousness. She mentally told herself, all these people are just cabbages and turnips, only cabbages and turnips. Repeating this mental mantra steadied her nerves. She quietly passed the trick over to Yulina, whose hands were shaking. The 2 stood facing the sea of imaginary vegetables and smiled politely as the secretary prepared to speak. Yan Weimin was secretly impressed by their composure. Even he had felt nervous seeing the public security officers arrive. He cleared his throat. Now, let's hear from our public security comrade. Zhao Zhigua stepped forward and addressed the villagers in a solemn tone. Half a month ago, with the help of Comrade Gu and Comrade Yu, we apprehended a gang of human traffickers. Following the clues they provided, we uncovered a large-scale human trafficking ring and rescued more than 100 abducted people. After discussion among the county government, public, security bureau, and commune authorities, we are presenting certificates of merit and rewards to these 2 comrades. Zhao Zhigua took the items handed to him by another officer and presented them to Gu Jiyu and Yulina. You 2 have performed a great service. Thanks to the testimony from the captured traffickers, we obtained lists of accomplices and rounded up the entire ring, rescuing many victims. The authorities approved extra rewards for your efforts. I must remind you, however, to prioritize your safety. In future incidents, seek out public security officers first and do not take reckless risks. Gu Jiyu and Yulina nodded repeatedly. We will be more careful. Thank you, Captain Zhao. Their rewards were substantial and identical for both. A certificate of merit, an enamel mug engraved with "For Courage and Righteous Deeds," a fountain pen, and an envelope holding cash and food coupons. It was clear how significant their contribution had been, meriting such generous recognition. After handing over the rewards, Zhao Zhigua turned back to the crowd, his expression grave. Folks, the traffickers we arrested came from another province. Human trafficking persists, and these are by no means the last criminals we will face. Everyone must stay vigilant. Be wary of strangers, and never let your guard down. Families with children, warn them thoroughly. Do not take foolish chances. With that, Zhao Zhigua stepped back and yielded the floor to the party branch secretary. You all heard what the public security comrade said, the secretary continued. Watch your children closely. Don't let them go near unknown strangers, and don't let them wander off alone. Every child is precious to their family. If a child goes missing, there will be no consolation for your grief. The brigade leader added a few more remarks, then told everyone to disperse and return to their work. The crowd gradually scattered. Since it was still early, most headed back to the fields, chatting as they went about the evil of human traffickers. Nearby, Zhao Zhigua spoke briefly with the brigade cadres. Then he and the other 2 public security officers mounted their bicycles and rode away. They had borrowed the bikes from the commune police station and needed to catch a shuttle bus back to the county. The county's only jeep was being used by senior officials. Once the officers were gone, the party branch secretary was overjoyed and clapped Yan Weimin hard on the shoulder, making him wince. Easy. This is flesh, not iron. If you break something, you'll have to pay for my treatment. The old secretary paid him no mind. Can't you see? Thanks to educated youth Gu and her reward, we are practically guaranteed the advanced unit title this year. That will mean more fertilizer allocations next year. Better harvests will improve life for every household in the village. Of course I know that. Yan Weimin shot him a glance. I am simply maintaining proper composure. As brigade leader, I cannot carry on like an excitable fool. How would that set an example for the villagers? The secretary scoffed. Cut the act. I know exactly what you are like. If no one were watching, you would be grinning from ear to ear. Don't pretend with me. Yan Weimin fought hard to hold back his rising smile. I have no more to say to you. He turned and walked off before the secretary could tease him further. Once he was out of sight, he could no longer suppress his broad grin. Let's see if old Lu Taiju dares show off in front of me this year. The advanced brigade award is ours for sure. Humming to himself, Yan Weimin headed toward the farmland to supervise work progress, determined to secure the title for their brigade. The secretary watched his retreating figure and rolled his eyes. Keep pretending all you want. He then headed back to the brigade office. On the other side, watching Gu Jiu and Yulina stand on the stage to receive their rewards and certificates, Jiang Yu in the crowd was consumed by overwhelming envy. What right did they have? Not to mention Gu Jiu, that sickly girl, even Yulina, someone who had never gotten the better of her before. What gave Yulina the right to receive an award from the Public Security Bureau for catching human traffickers? With her wits, she ought to count herself lucky she had not gotten tricked by traffickers herself. Yulina, just be jealous if you want, why resort to personal attacks? She envied Gu Jiu even more. Though Gu Jiu's health was terribly poor, she lived such a good life, far better than Jiang Yu's. Gu Jiu received parcels sent from home, while all the letters Jiang Yu got demanded that she send money and goods back home. The contrast gnawed at her so sharply she could almost grind her teeth to dust. Yet there was nothing she could do. Yulina would not so much as acknowledge her these days. Zhao Jianzhou had gotten into numerous conflicts with his family over coming down to the countryside. Worn out by farm, field labor, he no longer catered to her every whim as he once had. As for Lin Weigua, forget it. He barely spoke to her anymore ever since the production team leader had punished her. Life in the countryside had turned out nothing like what she had imagined. She was miserable, yet forced to watch others live wonderful lives she could never hope for. Jealousy coiled inside Jiang Yu like a venomous snake, gnawing away at her heart day and night. She made no effort to break free, nor could she. She could only sink along with it. The better Gu Jiu fared, the more tormented Jiang Yu became. But Gu Jiu's fragile health was like a ticking bomb, holding Jiang Yu back from acting. She even kept her distance, terrified that any mischief on her part might trigger an illness in Gu Jiu and drag her into trouble. Still, a bomb was a bomb. If she stayed far enough away, the explosion would not harm her. So Jiang Yu thought, and so she waited, biding her time for an opportunity. She suppressed the jealousy threatening to burst forth from her chest. She burned with hatred for Gu Jiu, yet could do nothing. Malicious thoughts condensed and swelled inside her, building pressure, waiting for the day they would turn into a monster and drag everyone down into the abyss. Gu Jiu knew nothing of the hidden danger lurking in the shadows, watching her every move with hostile eyes. Right now, she and Yulina were back home, excitedly looking through the rewards inside their envelopes. Hey, you, look what's in your envelope. I've got 30 yuan, 2 Gene of grain tickets, and even 2 industrial coupons. Wow, these rewards are really generous. Yulina's eyes sparkled as she stared at her envelope, turning to Gu Jiu. This is the first time I've ever gotten an award delivered by the Public Security Bureau. The certificate even has an official stamp on it. Gu Jiu glanced inside her envelope. The money and tickets matched exactly what Yulina had described. Her tone was far less animated. Mine is the same as yours. Also 30 yuan plus those vouchers. Yulina stared at her, astonished by Gu Jiu's calm demeanor. Hey, you, aren't you excited at all? This is an official reward from the Public Security Bureau. Gu Jiu was practically bursting with excitement on the inside. This was the very first official award she had received across 2 lifetimes. She planned to keep it safe and never spend any of it. She held her emotions in check, afraid overexcitement would strain her body. I'm extremely excited, but my health won't let me show it. I have to stay calm. Yulina blinked, watching Gu Jiu state her excitement with such a composed expression. Could someone really be like that? She looked at Gu Jiu's fair face and remembered, right, you was in poor health and could not get overwrought. Well then, it's still early. We ought to go to work. I haven't finished gathering all my pigweed yet. Gu Jiu stood and walked outside together with Yulina. She locked her door, waited for Yulina to stow away her things, and the two headed for the fields. On the road, Yulina chattered on. Human traffickers are so hateful. They kidnapped so many people. They deserve to get wet. Before Yulina could finish her sentence, Gujiu clapped a hand over her mouth. Will you hold your tongue? You can't just blurt out anything you think. Yulina pulled Gujiu's hand away, a chill running down her spine. If anyone had overheard them, even handing back their certificates would not have saved them from trouble. Gujiu patted her shoulder. Watch what you say from now on. I can't keep covering for you. Hurry along, we've wasted plenty of time already. If you drag your feet, you'll never finish your quota. At the village entrance, they parted ways. Yulina hurried off at a quick pace. Gujiu sighed. Even with an award in hand, she still had to work. She still needed to collect quite a bit more pigweed. She made 2 more trips carrying pigweed before she finally completed her task. Because the public security officers had come to hand out the awards that morning, Gujiu finished work much later than usual. Before heading home, she signed in at North Slope. Ding! Sign in successful. Items have been stored in the system space. Once home, Gujiu did not rush to cook. Instead, she checked what she had received from today's sign-in. She had caught a quick glimpse earlier and suspected something quite remarkable had turned up. Today's sign-in rewards: 1 wild pheasant, 1 wild hare, 4 baskets of pigweed, 10 wild eggs, 1 slingshot, 50 sling pellets, 50 varieties of poisonous mushrooms, 1 gene of croton beans, 1 10-yuan banknote, 1 gene grain ticket, and 1 mysterious map. Today's sign-in gifts were rather strange. Setting aside the poisonous mushrooms, which could be used for compounding various preparations, they had given a full gene of croton beans. That was a lethal dosage. Just who were they hoping to give severe gastrointestinal distress to? Still, as she looked at the croton beans in her system space, a mischievous glint crossed Gujiu's eyes. Used cleverly, this stuff was quite a powerful tool. Only time would tell whether anyone would be unlucky enough to receive this gift from nature. She pulled out the map. All right then, let me see just how mysterious this so-called mysterious map really is. Unfolding it, she found it was a topographic map of Great Green Mountain. A winding line had been drawn across it, ending at 2 characters, cave. The location lay deep within the inner reaches of Great Green Mountain. In the lower, left corner of the map was a handwritten note: Mysterious cave in Great Green Mountain. Go take a look. You might strike it rich overnight. Gujiu_system, have you stopped idling in the background? This map even has a playful tone. Strike it rich overnight? Am I supposed to climb the mountain in the middle of the night just to get eaten by wolves? That cave is far too deep in the mountains for a small nobody like me to venture into. This map was plainly meant just to tantalize her. She put the map away to get it out of her sight, then frowned over another problem. The system was giving her far too many supplies. She could not possibly use them all. Her system space held 18 wild pheasants and even more wild hares, all still covered in fur. She had no idea where the system kept sourcing all these animals. Would this not throw off the local ecological balance? Staring at the fluffy dead rabbits stored in her space, Gujiu's mouth watered. Rabbits were so cute. Why could they not arrive already plucked? She could pluck the chickens herself, but she had no clue how to handle rabbit pelts. System, if you complain so much, don't take them. Gujiu, I don't have that option. Gujiu went to her vegetable patch and picked some kidney beans, 2 cucumbers, and 2 heads of lettuce to prepare lunch. Thanks to Gujiu's careful tending, the vegetables in her small garden were ready for harvest. Though the yield was modest, it was more than enough for one person. Every so often Yulina would pop over and pluck a handful of bok choy. It was not that Yulina lacked vegetables of her own, but her garden had very little variety. She often envied Gujiu and praised her for bringing seeds from home, calling her little garden small yet fully stocked. In truth, all of Gujiu's seeds had come from the system, boasting an extremely high survival rate. For lunch, Gujiu fried kidney beans with lard, sautéed lettuce with minced garlic, and made an egg drop soup with shredded cucumber. 2 dishes and 1 soup, paired with a bowl of white rice, made up her midday meal. As the weather grew warmer, Gujiu preferred lighter vegetable-based meals. She ate meat from her space only every 2 or 3 days, and she found herself wanting to eat it even less often. After lunch, with nothing urgent to do, Gujiu took out the medicinal herbs stored in her space and began compounding preparations, following the recipes in her book. Ever since she had obtained that comprehensive manual on toxicology, the system had frequently rewarded her with poisonous medicinal materials during sign-ins. She had already built up a stockpile of finished concoctions, sleeping powder, hallucinogens, potent laxatives, mute, inducing powder, and other non-lethal but practical agents. Reading the book had taught her that Fei San, the ancient anesthetic, was also technically a poison. Thinking about it, that made sense. Anesthetizing a person could permanently harm them. Come to think of it, nearly every medicine carried some level of toxicity. No wonder the book was so thick. Gu Jiu dried the poisonous mushroom caps over her stove lid, ground them into fine powders, and poured them into separate bottles. She added certain psychoactive mushroom varieties to her hallucinogen blends to boost their potency. She also ground a portion of the croton beans into powder and stored it. Whole beans were too obvious and awkward to deploy. Due to her poor physical health, Gu Jiu had developed a strong urge to be well prepared. Even if she never needed them, she wanted sufficient defensive potions on hand. Frail body, but fully armed. Since materials were plentiful, she slowly processed them into finished products in her free time and stowed them in a corner of her system space, well separated from food supplies to avoid accidental self-poisoning. Word of the Public Security Award ceremony had spread far and wide. That evening, quite a few people from the neighboring educated youth compound showed up, bringing small stools and sitting in circles in Gu Jiu's courtyard. Gu Jiu was sitting at her desk reading, waiting for her hair to dry after washing it after dinner, when Zhang Mei knocked on her door and informed her of the crowd. When she opened the door, Zhang Mei stared, dazzled by the sight of her. "Comrade Gu, you look absolutely stunning." With no evening chores to attend to, Gu Jiu had changed into comfortable light blue home clothes. Her long hair hung loose, still slightly damp. Her features were delicate, her complexion fair. Standing there quietly, she embodied the beauty of a lotus flower blooming naturally from clear water. Gu Jiu stared back at Zhang Mei, slightly exasperated. "Comrade Zhang, pull yourself together. I know I look fine, but you can't keep gaping like that. You look like you are about to drool." Once Gu Jiu spoke, Zhang Mei snapped out of her daze and returned to reality. "Comrade Gu, you've adapted to life here impressively fast. I've been here over a year and still don't speak with such a strong local accent." Gu Jiu did not react. She was merely falling back on old habits, not adapting to fit in. If she did not have to offer an explanation, she could have spoken perfectly authentic local dialect the very day she arrived. Glancing at the crowd seated all across her courtyard, Gu Jiu frowned. When was this gathering planned? No one told me anything about it. Zhang Mei glanced back at the seated crowd and smiled. It's not a formal meeting. Everyone just wants to chat together. Very well. She had nothing better to do. A casual group conversation would be fine. Give me a moment. I'll be right out. Should I bring my own stool? I'll head back first. Just grab a small wooden stool. Gu Jiu went inside, tied her hair back with a fabric ribbon, picked up a small stool, and stepped out to join the gathering. She wondered what topics they would bring up. When she drew near, she saw two overlapping rings of people deep in conversation. It almost resembled a formal meeting. "Hey you, over here. I've saved you a spot." Yulina waved cheerfully, gesturing for Gu Jiu to sit beside her. Whether by accident or on purpose, the empty seat was right next to Gu Jiu. Gu Jiu sat down and listened to the conversation flowing around her. Had she imagined it, or had Gu Jiu just winked at her? No, she had definitely seen it. The man had just sent her a blatant suggestive glance in front of everyone. Had he no sense of propriety at all? Gu Jiu shot him a sharp glare and scanned the surrounding crowd. Thankfully, no one else had noticed. The moment Gu Jiu sat down, however, nearly every pair of eyes turned toward her. People were simply struck by how beautiful she was. Gu Jiu rarely went out, and when she worked in the fields, she kept herself heavily covered. This was the first time many of them had seen her so relaxed and at ease. Her hair partially woven through the fabric ribbon fell forward over her shoulders, and her skin glowed pale and luminous. Ahem. Seeing everyone's gaze fixed on Gu Jiu felt a surge of irritation. He could not very well order them all to look away, so he coughed loudly to draw their attention. At the sound of Gu Jiu's cough, the others snapped out of their trance and diverted their eyes, though their glances kept drifting back toward Gu Jiu. The young women meant no harm, but the young men stole frequent surreptitious looks. It was not romantic interest. They simply could not help staring at such striking beauty. None of them harbored real intentions toward her. After all, she was still very young, and not everyone was like Yi Jiyu. Yi Jiyu, that's a low blow. Several young women moved closer to Gu Jiyu, complimenting her hair. Yulina stared intently. Ayu, how did you style your hair like this? I never thought of weaving a ribbon into it. It looks so lovely. Other young women with long hair crowded around. They knew they could not match Gu Jiyu's natural beauty, but they hoped to learn the hairstyle. Overwhelmed by the sudden surge of attention, Gu Jiyu responded. Come over to my place sometime and I'll show you how to do it. They nodded eagerly and asked where she had bought her ribbon. Gu Jiyu touched the ribbon in her hair. I brought this from home. The supply and marketing cooperative might sell similar ones. If not, you can use any nice strip of cloth. Delighted, the young women went back to their seats, planning to try the hairstyle later. Jiangyu was not among them. She sat toward the back, watching Gu Jiyu with complicated, distinctly unfriendly eyes. Seeing others gather happily around Gu Jiyu made Jiangyu's resentment burn hotter. Why could everyone chat so warmly with Gu Jiyu yet ignore her? As she looked over the other young women, a vicious idea took shape in her mind. Once everyone settled down, Lin Bing spoke first, addressing those from the separate living quarters. We thought it had been too long since the two compounds got together. We just wanted to gather and talk. Sui Bai laughed behind his glasses. Come on, we all know better. Everyone is curious about the award ceremony from today. To be honest, I am too. Comrade Gu and Comrade Yu haven't shared many details. Comrade Gu, Comrade Yu, would you mind telling us what happened? He pushed his glasses up his nose, genuine curiosity in his eyes as he looked toward the two young women. Gu Jiyu saw no reason to refuse. The public security officers had already made their appearance. Only finer details remained untold. She saw no harm in talking. With Gu Jiyu's approval, Yulina launched into an animated retelling of the events. She recounted the fainted old woman who had actually been drugged, their abduction, waking to find other captive girls, discovering the hidden window behind the cabinet, the traffickers writhing on the ground, and finally calling for help. Using dramatic gestures and vivid emotion, she stretched a short sequence of events into a full-blown performance, full of twists and turns. Even Gu Jiyu, who had lived through it, could almost believe her exaggerated account. Yulina knew what to keep secret, however. She never mentioned Gu Jiyu's medicinal powder, only stating that the traffickers had eaten toxic mushrooms. Everyone listening grew indignant, condemning the cruel traffickers and wishing they could beat the criminals senseless if they appeared before them. When Yulina finished speaking, the crowd remained eager for more. Meng Yuan pressed her for further details. What happened afterward? You never said anything after you got back. Gu Jiyu shook her head and spoke to the assembled crowd. Captain Zhao told us not to spread the story, for fear of drawing the traffickers' attention and inviting unnecessary trouble. Beyond that, she paused and continued, I do not think two young women being kidnapped is something worth broadcasting. Gossip can destroy a person. Everyone nodded in agreement. Rumors and slander could ruin lives. If word got out that the two girls had disappeared overnight with traffickers, gossip would twist the story no matter how much they tried to explain. Harm would be unavoidable. Lin Bing said, the public security officers probably discouraged talk also to protect you from retaliation. They said they managed to take down the entire trafficking ring before coming to give you the awards. Sui Bai nodded in agreement. That is true. Still, you two ought to stay vigilant. There could be fugitives who escaped arrest, and you might remain in danger. Gu Jiyu found their warning very sensible. She intended to keep her system-stored weapons and medicinal concoctions well-stocked for self-defense. Yulina nodded seriously, vowing not to meddle recklessly and never to travel alone. They chatted about ordinary daily matters for a while longer before the crowd dispersed. Gu Jiyu could tell they had mostly come to hear the story of the human trafficker case. Still, she had to admire the Public Security Bureau's efficiency. She remembered just how long those two lists of suspects had been. They had apprehended nearly everyone in half a month. Truly outstanding work from the People's Public Security Force. As the crowd dispersed, different thoughts swirled in each person's mind regarding the award ceremony. Jiangyu harbored the most malicious intentions. After hearing Sui Bai's warning about possible fugitives targeting Gu Jiyu, her mind churned with schemes. If Gu Jiyu were kidnapped by traffickers, Jiangyu could distance herself completely from any consequences. No blame would stick to her. The question was, how could she get traffickers to target Gu Jiyu? A twisted smile tugged at Jiangyu's lips as she imagined Gu Jiyu being dragged away. Jiang Mei and the others exchanged glances, confused by Jiang Yu's strange smile. Her expression held no warmth, but they chose not to press her. Her odd grin clearly stemmed from ill will. Yu Ziyu also grew worried for Gu Ziyu's safety after hearing Sui Bai's words. Before the award ceremony, few people knew Gu Ziyu's role in dismantling the trafficking ring. Now far too many were aware. He would need to think of ways to keep her safe. Speaking of Gu Ziyu's safety, Yu Ziyu frowned with worry. If he made her train with him, her body wouldn't hold up. If he kept her by his side, their statuses made that inappropriate. Even getting her a gun was out of the question. He didn't have one himself. So, what was he supposed to do? Yu Ziyu thought and thought, yet no good solution came to mind. He was so stressed he felt as though he'd aged decades overnight. But Gu Ziyu's poor physical condition was the biggest problem. What terrified Yu Ziyu most was that if bad people showed up, she would exhaust herself before she could even run far. Eventually, Yu Ziyu stared at the pile of parts inside his crate. He would make her a self-defense weapon himself. It needed to be small, easy to carry, and simple to conceal. Gu Ziyu had no idea how much thought someone was putting into her safety. For her part, she was growing anxious too. What if some of the criminals had escaped? She was practically defenseless in a fight. She would have to speed up preparing her poisons. She still had plenty of medicinal herbs inside her spatial storage. She even considered taking the gun out of her space to practice her aim, but that was impossible. The noise would draw attention, and she would end up in serious trouble. Better to sleep on it and deal with everything tomorrow. She also needed to practice Tai Chi more. Even if she could never be Zhang Sanfeng, becoming another Zhang Wuji ought to be enough for self-protection. With these thoughts, Gu Ziyu drifted off to sleep. In truth, what she already had on hand was more than enough to fend off several attackers without firearms. Still, it never hurt to be prepared. The next day, Gu Ziyu went to work as usual, only to notice the villagers were far friendlier toward her. To put it plainly, far more people greeted her. No longer did they avoid her as if she brought misfortune. TCH. She was no bringer of misfortune. Her walk to work unfolded like this. Hey, educated youth Gu, off to work? Morning, Aunt Chunhua. Have you eaten, educated youth Gu? I have. Good morning, Uncle Lu. Come over to my house sometime, educated youth Gu. Thank you, Aunt Yufin. Good morning, educated youth Gu. Good morning. Morning, educated youth Gu. Good morning. After returning all those greetings, Gu Ziyu's face was stiff from smiling. When she reached the north slope, instead of handing out candy to the children lined up opposite her, she first pulled out her water canteen and took a long drink. She had talked so much that morning her mouth was parched. There was one piece of good news though. After over a month of working together, and after Gu Ziyu's piggrass workload shifted from 2 back baskets to 4 and back down to 2, the children, afraid she would stop hiring them, had volunteered to renegotiate their pay. The rule changed from half a back basket of piggrass for 1 candy to 1 full back basket for 1 candy. Now Gu Ziyu only needed to give out 2 candies each day and carry the piggrass away. The children sorted out candy distribution and work shifts among themselves, so long as they gathered 2 full back baskets of grass. Sister Gu, what's wrong with you? Go Dan asked, noticing how worn out she looked. Sister Gu was usually full of energy in the mornings. She had never looked like this before. Gu Ziyu looked at the crowd of little kids, whose eyes held both curiosity and concern. Nothing much. I just talked too much. Oh, they nodded, half understanding, took their candies, and went off to cut grass. Gu Ziyu kept busy too, rummaging through the weeds for wild vegetables and other useful plants. Once she had dropped off the piggrass, she circled around to the other side of the village. Soon a wild pheasant appeared in her back basket, which she covered with a big handful of wild vegetables taken out of her spatial storage. Time to head home and cook. Back home, Gu Ziyu boiled water, got her ingredients ready, and plucked the pheasant. Its feathers were quite pretty, she would keep them. Maybe feathers could be traded for candies. That would cover the children's pay for a couple of days. As she stoked the stove fire, a thought crossed her mind. Having a suitor might not be so bad. At the very least, she would not need to carry firewood herself. He could offer emotional support and small thoughtful gifts. The gifts did not need to be precious. Thoughtfulness counted. But how long that thoughtfulness would last remained to be seen. She chopped the pheasant into pieces and cooked chicken stew with mushrooms. On the steamer rack, she steamed a small basin of rice. For a side dish, she pounded a cucumber. The meal smelled wonderful. While eating, she thought about her tomato plants, which would soon ripen. Then her cold dishes would no longer be limited to pounded cucumber. She could make snow-covered flaming mountain, a famous dish that fetched a high price in restaurants. After eating, Gu Jiu planned her afternoon. She tidied her wardrobe, washed all her summer clothes, and cleaned her room, putting on new tablecloth and curtains. By the time she finished, it was past 3 o'clock. She had worked in short bursts with frequent rests. For her pace, finishing all that by 3 was quite an achievement. Gu Jiu was very satisfied with her little cottage. She could even imagine retiring here someday. Once the big cleanup was done, she collapsed onto her bed. She had far exceeded her physical limit for the day. Any more activity would leave her needing medicine. Her medicine time had not come yet, so she could only lie down and rest. She slept until after 6 o'clock. She felt hungry when she woke up, yet had no appetite. She took out an apple and bit into it. Chewing mechanically, her mind wandered. She had far too much free time. Aside from her daily work for one work point, there was little for her to do. She had traveled to another world, after all. Maybe she should take on more work and earn 2 work points a day? No, she really did not want more physical labor. But this body had a sharp mind. Yes, she was suited to making a living with her wits. She should read more books. On that ordinary evening, lying on her Kong bed, Gu Jiu resolved to become a knowledgeable person. She set to work at once. The apple had filled her stomach. She would start working through that set of mathematics, physics, and chemistry books. Even though she used to be weak in science subjects, she would push through. Interestingly, her current memory showed more balance. In her past life, she excelled at art subjects. In this life, her science aptitude was strong. Combined, she was almost perfectly well-rounded. Well-rounded academically, that was. No martial skill whatsoever. After graduating university in her previous life, she had forgotten much of what she had learned. In fact, she had started forgetting shortly after entering university. But in this new body, she could even recall calculus perfectly clearly. Peaceful days could grow dull. With no mobile phone to occupy her time, Gu Jiu craved something to keep her occupied. Life went on beautifully. While Gu Jiu longed for a mobile phone, others were busy with their own pursuits. Yi Jiu worked hard finishing the self-defense weapon for Gu Jiu. It was nearly complete. Qin Zhan struggled to learn how to cook edible meals. Yi Jiu was too busy and had strictly ordered him to learn. Yulina tended her vegetable garden with great effort. Comparing it to Gu Jiu's plot, hers looked sparse and messy. Jiang Yu meanwhile schemed constantly. She hoped to locate the escaped human traffickers and get Gu Jiu taken away. She visited the commune far more often. Jiang Yu's efforts bore fruit. Several times Gu Jiu spotted strangers watching her. She became extra careful whenever she went out and never walked alone. A wise person avoids danger, and the same applied to women. Those unfamiliar faces definitely did not belong to people from the production brigade. She went to speak with the branch secretary and brigade leader, asking them to warn the whole village to stay alert. That was how Qin Zhan ended up learning to cook. Once Yi Jiu learned strangers were following Gu Jiu, he grew even more anxious. He wanted to finish the weapon quickly so Gu Jiu would be safer. Cooking duties fell to Qin Zhan. After finishing work, Yi Jiu tinkered with his pile of parts and verbally guided Qin Zhan through cooking steps. Several days later, Qin Zhan's dishes were barely edible. He had to learn fast. Their first meal cooked by Qin Zhan had sent both men running to the latrine all night. Thank goodness they only had squat-style latrines. A flush toilet would surely have clogged. So Qin Zhan studied cooking with great dedication. One such miserable experience was more than enough. What Yi Jiu was building was not conceptually difficult, but it required very specific small components. Since the device needed to be compact, its parts had to be finely made. Hardly any ready-made parts fit, so he mostly shaped them by hand. All that filing and shaping made him joke he was practically an 8th-grade fitter, though he knew that rank was far from easy to achieve. When going out these days, Gu Jiu traveled well prepared. She carried stun powder and hallucinogenic powder on her person. She made several homemade masks and rotated them daily. If she needed to deploy her powders in an emergency, she would not accidentally inhale her own concoctions. She took daggers and crossbow bolts out of her spatial storage and kept them in easy-to-reach spots. She worried about making a mistake in a crisis. Imagine trying to throw stun powder only to grab laxative powder instead. It would work, but be horribly embarrassing. Gu Jiu also prepared hidden throwing needles. She took several sewing needles, coated them with poison, and stored them in a box inside her space. The poison came from a cobra she had obtained from a monthly sign in reward. The needles had soaked in snake venom for days. They would not guarantee instant death, but a hit would leave anyone incapacitated. Armed like this, Gu Jiu felt confident. If trouble came, she would deal with it. Those shadowing her could be nothing but bad people. That previous monthly sign in had rewarded her handsomely. She had to give her system credit. It had not flooded her with grain tickets, cloth tickets, and food supplies this time, just a handful of items. Yet those few prizes thrilled her. A pistol with 50 rounds of ammunition, 50 mathematics, physics, chemistry books. 10 volumes of a complete traditional Chinese medicine encyclopedia, 250-year-old ginseng roots. 130-year-old Ganoderma lucidum, and 300 yuan in cash. Forget the cash and books for a moment. Those ginseng and Ganoderma specimens were enough to make anyone jealous. Gu Jiu was practically a ginseng collector now. She possessed 10-year-old, 30-year-old, and 50-year-old roots. Aside from one 10-year-old ginseng sent home, she still kept 5 more. Few people in this era own such treasures. After sending ginseng home, her family mailed her an extra 50 yuan and begged her not to go up the mountain again. Still, she had gone twice more and collected 3 more 10-year-old ginseng roots, alongside many other supplies. What excited her most was the silenced pistol. It produced very little noise when fired. Coupled with her other gun, she had a contingency. If discovered after using the silenced pistol, she could discard the ordinary gun to mislead others. Both weapons used identical ammunition, differing only in muzzle report. Gu Jiu felt greatly reassured. 2 more days passed. Strangers still spied on Gu Jiu, but the United Production Brigade remained outwardly peaceful. News trickled over from the neighboring brigade that a child had gone missing. Gu Jiu suspected the calm would not last long. That evening, Yi Jiu came to see her and handed her an object shaped like a fountain pen with a small button on its side. "What is this?" Gu Jiu asked, turning it over in her hand. Yi Jiu smiled and held out a handful of small needles. "Something I built for yourself, defense." "Self-defense? From such a tiny gadget?" Noticing her surprise, Yi Jiu took it back. "I built it in the shape of a pen so you can carry it easily. I heard people have been following you, and I worry for your safety." He removed the cap. "See this? Press the button and 3 needles shoot out from the front opening. I have tested it. The penetrating power is strong." He replaced the cap and gave it back to her. "It can fire twice before you twist open the rear end to reload the needles. Be careful never to point the tip toward yourself." Gu Jiu held the device, eager to see its power. "Can I watch it work?" Seeing her excited flush, Yi Jiu agreed. "I made plenty of spare needles. Go ahead and test it." Gu Jiu glanced around, her eyes landing on a small wooden stool on the ground. "That one." Without hesitation, she held the pen-shaped device above the stool and pressed the button. The result astonished her. She gave Yi Jiu a thumbs up. "Wow, that's incredible." She stared at the 3 needles that had pierced straight through the wooden stool and stuck into the earth. It was like a compact hidden needle launcher. She looked at Yi Jiu with new respect. "What is it?" Yi Jiu rubbed his nose. "What about it?" "It's just, you are amazingly skilled." She glanced again at the pen-shaped hidden weapon. "Did this take a lot of work?" It was hard finding suitable parts, so it took some time. Yi Jiu did not downplay his effort. He believed hard work ought to be acknowledged. He glanced at Gu Jiu's pale cheeks. "You mentioned people have been stalking you. Having something for self-defense will keep you safer. You look worn out. Try not to worry too much. I will look out for you. I have also told Qin Zhan to watch for strangers." Gu Jiu fell momentarily speechless. She wanted to thank him, yet her complexion was actually much better than before. Still, she truly appreciated his concern. "Thank you for putting so much effort into making this for me. You have dark circles under your eyes. Have you been staying up late?" "It is nothing. Keep this on you at all times." Yi Jiu's tone turned serious. "Avoid isolated places. Even with this weapon, danger remains. Come tell us right away if anything happens." Gu Jiu nodded. "Don't worry. I value my life very much." Yi Jiu believed her. He had long observed how carefully she looked after herself, early to bed, early to rise. Regular exercise, 5 animal exercises in the morning, Tai Chi in the evening. never drinking cold water, occasionally adding goji berries to her drinks. She lived like a disciplined elderly gentleman. Gu Jiu suspected the casing had come from a real fountain pen. She turned to her trunk, and using it to block his view, pulled a Hero brand fountain pen out of her spatial storage. She held it out toward him. "What's this for?" Yi Jiu asked, confused. "A return gift." Gu Jiu shook the hidden weapon pen in her other hand. "You gave me something, so I give you something back. This is just an ordinary writing pen. I cannot build clever little gadgets like you can, so this is all I have. You aren't disappointed, are you?" "Not at all." Yi Jiu quickly took it, clutching it tightly, grinning broadly. "This is the very first gift you have given me. I will treasure it. It is just a pen, meant for writing." Gu Jiu thought his reaction was over the top. He left clutching the pen so carefully one might think he carried a bomb. Gu Jiu almost teased him about his awkward gait as he walked away. She could not understand getting so emotional over a pen. As a modern woman who had never dated, romance held little priority for her. A partner would be nice, but not necessary. Marriage was fine, yet she could live perfectly well without it. Raised by modern, era online discourse, she would never act like a bashful young maiden. In her view, a man ought to put in genuine effort if he wanted a wife. Expecting a wife without making any effort was nothing but wishful thinking. Therefore, she felt no guilt accepting gifts from Yi Jiu. She always gave something back in return, never taking unfair advantage. Just as Gu Jiu feared, those watching her ran out of patience. One day, after she had delivered her first load of pig grass, 3 men cornered her on an empty stretch of road just outside the village. All 3 were men in their 30s, plain, looking enough to blend into any crowd, yet their eyes were fierce. They were almost certainly leftover human traffickers. Unlike the gang member Gongzi, these 3 were thin and malnourished. They surrounded Gu Jiu in a triangular formation. The man facing her spoke first. "You are Gu Jiu?" The educated youth who caught human traffickers in the county. Though phrased as a question, his tone left no room for doubt. Gu Jiu nodded straight-faced. "I am." "What of it?" "Damn it. How dare you ask what's wrong?" The crew, cut man to Gu Jiu's left, roared angrily, rolling up his sleeves. "If it weren't for you, Aunt Shui wouldn't have been arrested. Our hideout back home got raided." Another man seethed with rage. "Third brother, don't waste words on her. Grab her right now." "Aren't Boss Huang looking for people right now? This girl has a decent-looking face. We could get a good price for her." The crew, cut man narrowed his eyes, a malicious grin spreading across his face. "She's got a good figure. Before we hand her over, we could have some fun with her first." The man they called third brother shot the crew, cut man a sharp glance. "Cut that nonsense. You know Boss Huang wants her intact. Stone, tie her up at once before anyone shows up." Stone scratched his head. "Right. If she's damaged, she won't fetch much money." With that, he pulled a rope from behind him and moved to bind Gu Jiu. Gu Jiu watched the 3 men. In just a short while, they had already decided her fate. And a cold smirk crossed her mind. If they hadn't mentioned this Boss Huang, and if she hadn't feared they might have other accomplices lying in wait, she would have already flung a handful of powder in their faces to finish them off. Hallucinogenic powder mixed with toxic mushroom powder, a special treat reserved for human traffickers. Who even are you people?" Gu Jiu put on a terrified act, her voice trembling as the 3 closed in. "I've received official commendations from the Public Security Bureau. If you lay a finger on me, you'll be in serious trouble. If you come any closer, I'll scream. The villagers will hear me, and they'll catch you." The 3 men exchanged glances and laughed. Third brother sneered. "Do you think we've been hanging around here for nothing? There isn't a soul around at this hour." The crew, cut man smirked. "Go ahead and shout. No one's coming to save you, no matter how loud you scream." Gu Jiu's skin crawled at those cringeworthy lines. What cheesy, overused villain dialogue. She mentally craved a cold lemon drink to wash away the second-hand embarrassment. Should she really yell for help just to play along with their cliché script? Stone said nothing and proceeded to tie Gu Jiu's hands and feet. Seeing her fall silent, third brother assumed she was terrified. He urged Stone to finish tying her up so they could leave quickly. Gu Jiu twisted her wrists once her limbs were bound. The knots were painfully tight. The thought had barely crossed her mind when the world spun around her. She was slung over someone's shoulder. This felt nothing like the last time she'd been carried. Back then it had been Gongzi, a big, burly man, whose shoulder had only dug into her uncomfortably. Now it was Stone. Short and scrawny, he somehow had just enough strength to lift her, but not much more. He was gasping for breath before they had gone far. Gu Jiu had no mental space for other thoughts. Fear and sharp physical discomfort washed over her. No one had told her they were heading up the mountain. Perched on Stone's bony shoulder, she worried about getting her face scraped raw by overhanging branches. What's more, he kept stopping to catch his breath. She feared he might drop her at any moment. Every jolt sent deep aches through her. His shoulder was nothing but sharp bone, digging hard into her torso. Nausea swelled in her throat. The gag stuffed in her mouth kept her from throwing up all over him, which was just as well. Stone, hurry up. Quit dragging your feet back there. Third brother and the crew, Cutman's voices echoed from up ahead. Calm, coming. Third brother, crew, Cut brother, wait for me. Stone panted hoarsely. So those two were the ones calling the shots. And was the other guy really just called Crew, Cut, after his hairstyle? Had he gotten the haircut to match his nickname, or gotten the nickname because of his haircut? Probably the latter. She had no idea where they were taking her. There were no obvious hiding spots on the mountain's outer slopes. Maybe she was wrong. There were plenty of places she had never explored. She would wait and see what happened when they handed her over to Boss Huang. Seeing how slow Stone was moving, the two men in front doubled back. They lifted Gu Jiu between them and quickened their pace. Though her position changed, she was still miserable. Her mind wandered aimlessly. She could not fathom these men's complete lack of common sense. Why tie both her hands and feet and carry her? Why not just bind her wrists and make her walk on her own? They exhausted themselves while torturing her. She had no choice but to endure it. Third brother moved fast. In roughly under an hour they stopped, or at least Gu Jiu guessed so. Since they had stolen her watch again. Her watch kept getting taken, and there was nothing she could do about it. Judging by her surroundings, they had reached the mountain's inner zone. A small cave lay hidden behind thick tangled vines, nearly invisible from the outside. Third brother pushed aside the vines and stepped inside, lighting a kerosene lamp. Gu Jiu was carried in by the crew, Cutman and Stone, then dropped roughly onto the stone floor with a dull thud. Pain shot up through her hips. The two men shook out their sore arms. Damn, this woman's heavy. Carrying her here wore me out, the crew, Cutman complained. Sure was. Looks thin, but she weighs a lot, Stone agreed. Gu Jiu glared furiously at them. You weak fools, who are you calling heavy? She was 167 centimeters tall and weighed less than 45 kilos. How was that heavy? They had chosen to carry her instead of making her walk, and now they blamed her for their own stupidity. Just wait till she got free. After dumping her on the ground, the men gathered to talk, ignoring her. Gu Jiu shifted her position and listened intently. Third brother, I have to head out soon. You two keep a close eye on her. Heading out? To find Boss Huang? Crew, Cut, don't worry, third brother. She won't get away with me watching her. I'm not planning to run, but neither will you. Stone nodded. Rest assured, third brother. I'll keep my eyes on her the whole time. Sure, as if you could stop me. Third brother looked at their confident faces. All right. I have to leave now or I won't make it back before dark. We need to sell her off fast before something goes wrong. The real mistake was kidnapping me in the first place. Greed lit up the crew, Cutman's eyes. Are you going to Boss Huang? Negotiate a good price. This Gu girl has good looks. Don't settle for too little. You may call me pretty, but nothing decent ever comes out of your mouths. Stone nodded eagerly. Exactly, third brother. We need more money this time. Our old hideout's gone. With the cash, we could move somewhere new, and I could finally get married. I'm over 30 and still don't have a family. You won't be getting one anytime soon. The crew, Cutman, kicked him. Quit going on about our hideout getting raided. That's nothing to boast about. Your deeds are shameful and so are you. Gu Jiu silently retorted to every word they said in her head, mentally tearing them apart. All right, I'm off. There's some food in the cave. Make do for lunch. I'll bring more when I get back. Third brother fixed a hard stare on Gu Jiu. Behave yourself. Otherwise you'll end up with broken limbs. They might heal, but you'll suffer every step of the way. Gu Jiu stared blankly into space, refusing to respond. Say whatever you want. Once you're gone, these two idiots won't stand a chance against me. Third brother shot her one last warning glare. Realizing time was pressing, he turned and left. Gu Jiu glowered at his retreating back. She now realized the watch he had glanced at was hers, stolen once more. She quickly set aside thoughts of her lost watch. The crew cut man was walking toward her with a repulsive look on his face, reaching out to touch her cheek. Gu Jiu's gaze turned icy. This man was asking for trouble. His hand made contact with her skin, and Gu Jiu's expression turned dark. She had seen him dig into his nostril with that exact same hand, then wipe it on the sole of his shoe. And he had not washed it at all. Soft, skinned little face, he muttered, stroking her cheek. Shame third brother won't let me do more than touch. Gu Jiu twisted her head away, trying to evade him, but could not break free. MMPH. MMPH. Get your hands off me. Hearing her muffled noises, the crew cut man pulled the gag from her mouth. Take your hand off me right now. Gu Jiu snapped as soon as she could speak. Instead of pulling away, he pressed harder. Daring to give me orders? I'm touching you, so what? His hand drifted lower. Gu Jiu wriggled backward, evading his grasp. Haven't you washed your hands in days? You just picked your nose and wiped it on your shoe. That's disgusting. Taken aback by her obvious revulsion, he lifted his hand and sniffed it. Damn, it really did smell foul. Furious, he rounded on Gu Jiu. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be stuck in this mess. If not for her, many of their associates would not have been arrested. Their whole network broken apart. He would not be forced to hide out in the mountains, afraid of being caught in public. He raised his hand to slap her, but the thought of Boss Huang's payment stopped him. His arm fell back down in rage. Gu Jiu knew her submitted list of traffickers was behind their misfortune. She stayed sharp-tongued, confident they would not hurt her badly while hoping for a high sale price. I tried to escape after being kidnapped. You people committed terrible crimes and got caught. That has nothing to do with me. Who are you calling criminal? The crew cut man roared, losing his temper. He lunged to strike her. Stone hurried forward and grabbed him. Calm down. Third brother said not to hurt her. Boss Huang wants her unharmed. Damaging their merchandise would ruin their payout. Stone still dreamed of saving enough to marry. The crew cut man fought against Stone's grip. Did you hear what she said? She called us criminals. Stone held him firmly to stop him attacking. After a moment he answered flatly, she's not wrong. Human trafficking is a terrible crime. The crew cut man was stunned. Are you an idiot? She's insulting you and you agree with her. You know it's wrong, so why do you do it? It pays well, Stone replied with brutal honesty. Risky but profitable. I've saved a lot over the years. If the police hadn't closed in so fast, I wouldn't have had to run with nothing. The crew cut man could not find a single retort. Staring at Stone's blank matter of fact face, he felt his mind go blank. You fool. How did you even manage to escape? Anyone else would have made more sense. I just ran fast. Get out of my sight. I don't want to talk to you. The crew cut man stormed off. No wonder he had practiced acting tough for days to pull off his menacing persona. Stone stuffed the gag back into Gu Jiu's mouth and walked after him. Crew cut brother, are you hungry? I'm starving too. Let's eat something. Leave me alone. Gu Jiu watched the whole scene unfold, thoroughly absorbed. She had gone from captive to spectator in the blink of an eye. She felt like a bystander watching a drama. She had never imagined human traffickers could be like this. Their nicknames fit them perfectly. The crew cut man was hot-headed and easily provoked, while Stone lived up to his name. He was dull-witted yet strangely truthful. He knew trafficking was evil and still admitted it. In a strange way, he had self-awareness. Still, the memory of his dirty hand touching her cheek filled her with rage. She mentally went through the supplies stored in her spatial inventory. She opened the system sign in interface. System sign in. Ding. Sign in successful. Items transferred to system space. 1 lighter, 1 bundle of mugwort, 1 set of keys, 1 axe. 3 animal traps, 1 protective suit, 1 gas mask, 1 coil of rope, 1 roast chicken, 10 steamed buns. 1 large, denomination banknote, half kilo sugar coupon. Perfect. Rope and gas mask were now available, along with all her other stored supplies. She was fully prepared. She glanced toward the crew cut man. Let him keep his temper, her new supplies would handle him. Completely unaware of her plans, the crew cut man was bickering with Stone over food. There was not much stored in the cave. It was barely enough for the two of them. They argued over how to split the meal, 1 roast chicken, 3 steamed buns, and 2 cucumbers. They fought over the chicken legs, and the crew cut man won both. He bit into a big chunk of meat, triumphant. Then Gu Jiu's words echoed in his mind. His hands had been dirty. They were used to pick his nose and wiped on shoe leather. He stared at the chicken leg in his hand, unsure whether to keep chewing or spit it out. The rich smell of roasted meat teased his nose. "Give it to me if you aren't going to eat it," Stone said. "The legs have the best meat." The crew cut man hesitated, then took another bite. "What you don't know won't hurt you." The meat tasted wonderful. He rarely got chicken legs. Usually he only got the chicken neck. He shot Stone a smug look, knowing Stone would end up stuck with the chicken rear end. "You full yet?" Stone asked hopefully. Scram. After eating, they double-checked Gu Zhiyu's bindings. Satisfied the knots were tight, they yawned and lay down on a pile of dry grass in the back of the cave to sleep. Once loud snoring filled the cave, Gu Zhiyu pulled a small knife out of her spatial inventory and began sawing at her ropes. Hiss. She winced as the blade slipped and nicked her palm. Blind work with a knife was risky. It might not hurt others, but it would definitely hurt her. Still, the sharp blade sliced through the cordage quickly. Soon the ropes around her wrist snapped. She examined her hand. The cut was not large, but fairly deep and bleeding. She untied the ropes around her ankles. Glancing at the sleeping men, she saw they were fast asleep, their snoring rising and falling like off-key music. She retrieved medicine and bandages from her space and dressed her wound. Then she put on the gas mask, took out 2 incense, style, sleeping fumes, and the lighter. Click. The lighter sparked. The sound was soft, yet Gu Zhiyu held her breath, watching the sleepers. They did not stir. She lit the fumes. She had made these sleeping fumes out of curiosity, inspired by fictional stories of one incense stick knocking out crowds of people. She also had liquid sedatives, but incense felt more fitting. Fortunately, the system had given her a gas mask, so she would not be affected. Had one of them moved? Gu Zhiyu froze, observing carefully. She wanted to avoid using lethal force if possible. These homemade drugs were untested, and these traffickers made perfect test subjects. Thankfully, it had only been a roll-over. They sank back into slumber. As the fumes burned, their snoring gradually faded until only soft, quiet breathing remained. Gu Zhiyu snuffed out the incense and stored the unused portion back in her inventory. Less than half had burned, so it could be reused. Burning 2 sticks at once had sped up the effect. She was pleased how well her first batch had worked. "I'm so brilliant," she had accidentally spoken out loud. Embarrassed, she pretended to fan her cheeks from behind the mask. She crept over to the 2 men, pried open their jaws, and fed them a mixed handful of powder, sedatives, hallucinogens, and ground toxic mushroom. The dosage was mild. She dared not use too much. These criminals needed to be handed over to the authorities alive. She took rope and bound both men tightly. The drugs took effect quickly. They began thrashing and rolling on the ground, letting out muffled, frightened noises, yet their eyes never opened. They were subdued by the sedative. Gu Zhiyu walked over to the crew, cut man, and flipped him onto his stomach. His face hit the stone floor with a wet smack, drawing a groan of pain from his dazed state. She paid him no mind. Her gaze fixed on his exposed hands, the very hands that had touched her face. From her space, she retrieved a potent anesthetic mixture. She poured it over his palms. She made small shallow cuts in his skin to help absorption, then wrapped his hands securely in bandages so the liquid would not spill. This would leave his hands weakened. He would struggle even to lift chopsticks afterwards. He would never lay hands on another woman again. Then she forced a few more pills into his mouth. No more inappropriate thoughts for him. He would be fully occupied dealing with the side effects of the medication once he regained consciousness. Good luck to him. Finished with him, Gu Zhiyu walked to the cave mouth. She studied the surrounding terrain, recalling the route they had taken uphill. She recognized the area, not far from a trail she had used before, just further into the mountains. She considered going down the mountain to fetch help. But the journey had taken the traffickers nearly an hour, even moving fast. Traveling down alone would take her 2 hours at least. By the time she brought villagers or officers back, Third Brother might have returned. He might have seen his captured associates and fled. And that Master Huang they talked about would have to flee too. From their tone, he was evidently a big-time criminal. Gu Zhiyu sat at the cave mouth, filling her stomach with roasted chicken as she tried to think of a plan. What should she do if a large group of men showed up? After some thought, she figured there would not be too many of them. A big crowd would draw unwanted attention. While Gu Zhiyu was devising her strategy, chaos had erupted back at the production brigade. Gu Zhiyu had gone to hand in pigweed that morning and never returned. Gooden and the others had waited for her in vain. On their way back after turning in their own pigweed, they spotted her wicker basket discarded in the middle of the path. They hurried to find the brigade leader. When Yan Weimin learned Gu Jiu was missing again, he remembered her earlier warning. He recalled that someone had been following her, and his heart sank. Oh no, could educated youth Gu really have run into those escaped human traffickers? He sent Gooden rushing over to the educated youth compound to check, while he went to find Zhao Jianlin. He confirmed Gu Jiu had indeed come to submit her pigweed earlier. Gooden soon came back reporting she was nowhere to be seen at the compound. Yan Weimin's heart sank completely. He rushed to the party branch secretary. Oldly, Gu Jiu is missing. Gooden found her pigweed basket dumped on the road. And she isn't at the educated youth courtyard. She's most likely been snatched by those scoundrels. What on earth? The secretary was utterly shocked. Don't jest. Is educated youth Gu really gone? Seeing Yan Weimin nod, the secretary looked as though the sky were falling. Did the public security fail to round them all up? Have they really come back for her? He paced around anxiously. This won't do. Educated youth Gu has a frail constitution. If she gets hurt in any way, the consequences will be terrible. We have to find her at once. He slapped his forehead. Old Yen, go fetch educated youth Yi. Doesn't he have connections at the commune police station? We need to get the public security over here right away. The two men hurried toward where Yi Jiu was working. What? Educated youth Gu is missing. At the news, Yi Jiu dropped his tools immediately and turned to the secretary. When did she disappear? Where was she last seen? The secretary was frantic. Don't stand here talking. Hurry. Didn't you say you know people at the police station? Go get the public security authorities. He grabbed Yi Jiu's arm and pulled him along as they ran. Educated youth Gu handed in her pigweed first thing this morning and never came back. On his way home, Gooden found her basket thrown on the ground. But there was no sign of her, so he went straight for the brigade leader. Before long, Yu Jiu was the one pulling the secretary forward. Where is the brigade leader? The secretary gasped for breath as he ran. I sent him to the spot where she vanished to look for clues. Completely out of breath, the secretary tore free of Yi Jiu's grip. You go report to the police. I can't run any farther. I'm heading to meet the brigade leader. I suspect they may have gone up the mountain. He bent over, hands on his knees, gasping heavily. Growing old was no joke. A short run left him exhausted. Understood, I'm going now. Yi Jiu darted away, moving so fast few could have kept pace. He was beside himself with worry. Back at his house, he pulled out his bicycle, locked the door, and raced toward the commune. He pedaled so hard the crank seemed ready to spark. Half an hour later, he reached the commune police station. He parked his bike, registered at the gate, and rushed inside. Huang Jiangwo. Whoa, cough, cough, cough. Huang Jiangwo had been drinking water. The sudden shout startled him, and he choked, coughing violently. Hurry! Gu Jiu is missing. We suspect she has been abducted by the escaped human traffickers. Yi Jiu grabbed Huang Jiangwo's shoulder, his voice tight with urgency. Huang Jiangwo recovered and paled at the news. What are you saying? Are you certain? He called out. Zhang Lin, bring several men over at once. We have a report of a possible abduction by human traffickers. Seeing Yi Jiu sweating profusely, Huang Jiangwo tried to calm him. Don't panic yet. We will head out immediately. From what you say, she hasn't been gone long. There is still hope. Yi Jiu wiped sweat from his brow. You has a weak body. Even a minor injury would mean great suffering for her. Regret colored his tone. I should have stayed with her. It was my mistake. I thought giving her a self-defense tool would keep her safe. But those men struck far sooner than expected. Huang Jiangwo frowned. You knew these people were lingering about? Yes, we. Captain, I've gathered 3 men. Shall we depart now? Zhang Lin interrupted. Huang Jiangwo holstered his pistol, his expression grim. Check your weapons. The suspects are human traffickers. We don't know what arms they may possess. Zhang Lin, Wang Li, come help with the bicycles. 2 others will ride on the rear seats. We must move fast. He turned back to Yi Jiu. You lead the way. We can hear the full story on the road. Yi Jiu nodded. Soon 4 bicycles left the police station, heading for the Unity Production Brigade. Huang Jiangwo called to the men riding double. Switch riders when you grow tired. Got it, Captain Huang. All right, old Yi, tell me everything that happened. Yi Jiu recounted how Gu Jiu had noticed strangers watching her outside the village. He told how he had given her a self-defense item, and how her discarded basket had been found that day with no trace of her. Huang Jiangwo's face darkened. If you knew they were following her, why didn't you report this earlier? Yi Jiu shook his head. I tailed you for 2 days and saw no sign of them. She said those men fled the moment other people appeared. The station couldn't spare officers to guard her round. The clock and constant back and forth patrols were impractical. So we held off on filing a report. Huang Jiangwo had no good reply. The human trafficking case had supposedly been resolved, and the station was swamped with trivial local disputes. They simply could not assign men to keep constant watch over Gujiu. Let's press on. The men pedaled furiously, clouds of dust swirling behind the 4 bicycles as if a great army were advancing. While they hurried toward the brigade, Third Brother had successfully made contact with Master Huang's men. They agreed he would lead them up the mountain at dusk to see their captive. Daylight drew too much attention. These men were unbelievably bold. Though the recent crackdown had failed to catch them, they ought to have laid low. Yet they dared to commit crimes right under everyone's noses. While the villagers and Yiziu burned with anxiety, Third Brother and his accomplices felt smug. Meanwhile, Gujiu had made an alarming discovery. Staring at the cave's location, she realized it matched the spot marked on her spatial map. She pulled out the map and checked it repeatedly. There was no mistake, this was the cave shown on the chart. Gujiu followed the map's markings deeper inside. She passed the flat-faced man, whose nose was bruised and streaming blood. Ugh! Blood had dribbled into his mouth. She gave him a light kick. He rolled over with a dull thud. She took the cloth bindings from his wrists and stored them in her space. His limbs hung limp, the drug had fully taken effect. As she walked inward, she accidentally stepped on him several times. Muffled grunts escaped the man. Gujiu mumbled an apology and kept going. Then she trod on him once more. The cave was dim, it was not entirely her fault. Shaking her head, she continued inward with quick steps. Light faded the farther she went. Gujiu pulled out a flashlight. Holding the beam ahead, she talked to herself for courage. This utter blackness was terrifying. She half expected something to leap out of the shadows. She muttered under her breath. Spirits and demons, begone. Buddha, Jade Emperor, Jesus, Mary. She invoked every deity she could think of, East and West alike. Whether Western divinities could intervene in Eastern troubles hardly mattered. She called on them anyway. The cave ran deep. Before long she reached its innermost section, somewhat out of breath. The darkness behind her unnerved her, so she hurried forward, reasoning that if she ran fast enough, nothing supernatural could catch her. Gujiu stood still, flashlight trained on her map, wondering if she had misread it. All she saw was solid rock. Where was the treasure? She had come this far and refused to give up. She swept the flashlight beam inch by inch across the stone wall. At last she spotted a recess in one corner. Its shape resembled a flower or perhaps some creature. She could not tell exactly. Still, the shape felt oddly familiar. She examined the rest of the wall and found nothing else. Returning to the recess, she stared at it, puzzled. What could this be? She knew she had seen it somewhere before, but could not recall. As she stared, inspiration struck. She retrieved the key she had obtained from today's system sign, in reward from her space. She turned it over in her hands. It seemed metallic, though she could not identify the alloy. Its shape perfectly matched the hollow in the rock wall. Gujiu fitted the key into the recess. It slid in without the slightest gap. A click echoed, followed by the whir of hidden mechanical gears. The stone wall slid open, revealing a doorway. Facing the pitch, black secret chamber, Gujiu did not rush inside. She put on a gas mask first. From her space she took a candle, lit it, and tossed it into the chamber. At first the flame flickered, on the verge of dying out. After a while it steadied. She removed the gas mask and put on a cloth mask instead. The chamber was not huge, yet one flashlight could not illuminate every corner. Holding the light forward, she advanced slowly. Once inside, she swept the surroundings with her beam. Some 20 large wooden crates stood on the stone floor, each roughly 1 meter tall and wide, filling the space. She stepped closer and stared in bewilderment. These were crates, but they bore official paper seals. The seals bore a date, the 15th year of the Chongjin reign. Ming Dynasty relics. These were priceless antiques. Hidden so well, they had lain undiscovered for centuries. Gujiu supposed countless treasure seekers must have searched in vain. She had only obtained the key from today's sign-in. Even with the map, she could never have opened this place without it. Hey, system. Are you playing tricks on me? The system remained silent. Gu Jiu carefully peeled off the paper seals and stored them in her space. They were antiques in their own right, and her space had unlimited storage. Beneath the seals hung iron locks. Her space could absorb objects unimpaired, so she stored the locks away. She opened several crates one after another. She was gazing upon the greatest fortune she had ever beheld. Priceless treasures lay before her eyes. 5 crates were opened, one full of gold ingots, one of silver ingots, scrolls of paintings, exquisite jewelry, and fine silk fabrics. The jewelry was magnificent. Gu Jiu could tell the pieces were luxurious and the fabrics exceptionally smooth, though she could not assign precise values. Only the gold and silver ingots were plainly valuable. With more than 15 crates still unopened, she felt her future was completely secured. She wasted no time lingering. With a thought, she transferred all the crates into her space, intending to examine them later. Stepping out of the secret chamber, she pulled the key free. The stone door slid shut, leaving no trace of the hidden room. Gu Jiu sighed in admiration at the flawless craftsmanship. She stowed the key, shone her flashlight, and hurried toward the cave mouth. The darkness still unsettled her. She had done nothing wrong, yet fear gnawed at her. In her rush outward, she stepped on the 2 unconscious men sprawled on the ground. She stumbled and regained her balance. The 2 men curled in pain. It really had been an accident. Seeing they were still unconscious, she left them where they lay. Outside the cave, she found a well-concealed spot in the woods. She tucked a mosquito repellent sachet in her clothing, kept her crossbow close, and waited quietly. Unbeknownst to her, search parties had been combing the mountain for hours. When Yi Jiu and the public security officers reached the Unity Production Brigade, many villagers had already gathered at the brigade office, talking anxiously. At their arrival, the crowd swarmed around them. The brigade leader pushed through the throng and approached Huang Jiangwo. "Comrade Public Security, these are our village's able-bodied men. I called them to help search." "Good." Huang Jiangwo agreed at once. "Take us to the site." The party branch secretary and brigade leader led the way. When they neared the spot, Yan Weimin called them to halt. "You go ahead. We will stay back. Too many people would trample the footprints." The secretary nodded. "Exactly. From what we saw, the trail of prints leads uphill to the mountain. We didn't touch anything before you arrived." Huang Jiangwo and his men inspected the ground. Besides several children's footprints, they found 6 other sets. 3 sets formed a triangular pattern converging toward one point, almost certainly the abductor's tracks. Following the trail, it was clear the secretary had been correct. They went into the mountains. Huang Jiangwo and Yi Jiu spoke simultaneously. Yi Jiu studied the ground. 3 abductors. Gu Jiu was taken by force. The tracks point toward the western slope. The west. Huang Jiangwo frowned. "Many of these prints are smudged." "How can you tell?" Yi Jiu headed straight uphill. Their initial steps naturally trended west before they scattered. Carelessness left partial prints behind. Some impressions are deeper, showing they carried weight. Huang Jiangwo weighed Yi Jiu's observations against the evidence and saw he was right. He organized the group to advance into the mountains. Teams split off from the western approach, each public security officer paired with several villagers, searching inch by inch, determined not to miss any clue. Huang Jiangwo and Yi Jiu formed one team. While scanning for traces, he glanced at Yi Jiu's back. He had taken to calling her Au. If anything terrible befell her, this young man would be devastated. Gu Jiu kept watch from her hiding place when movement stirred among the trees below. She raised her crossbow, pressed herself deeper into cover, and aimed downhill, eyes fixed on the source of the noise. The commotion grew louder. This was her first experience in such a dangerous situation, and her hands trembled slightly. Soon a figure emerged. Gu Jiu tensed, ready to loose her bolt. But she held back. If these were Third Brother's men, firing would alert them and let them escape. When she recognized the newcomer, she let out a breath of relief. The shot would have been a terrible mistake. Yi Jiu. Yi Jiu had been examining footprints when he heard her voice. Could that be Gu Jiu? He jerked his head up and spotted her standing beside a tree, waving at him. Gu Jiu buried her face against Yi Jiu's chest, tears soaking through his sweat-stained shirt. His perspiration-soaked clothes smelled unpleasant. Gu Jiu caught the scent of Chinese honey locust soap mixed with cool mint, rising above the smell of sweat all around her. Listening to the rapid thud of his heartbeat against her ear and feeling his body heat, Gu Jiyu felt a surge of reassurance. At the same time, she could barely breathe. Being pressed against his chest was far too uncomfortable for her. Before she could say anything, Yi Jiyu let go of her. "Are you all right? Let me have a look at you." Yi Jiyu held her by the shoulders, checking her over carefully from head to toe. Watching how frantic he looked, Gu Jiyu kept telling him she was fine. Still, Yi Jiyu would not be easily reassured. "Are you truly not hurt anywhere? Don't lie to me." Gu Jiyu pulled his hand away from the top of her head, somewhat exasperated. "I'm really okay, my head is fine too." Seeing how soaked through with sweat Yi Jiyu was, she knew how genuinely worried he had been. She had never seen him look so disheveled before. One question burned in her mind, though. "Did you come here alone?" Yi Jiyu shook his head. "I contacted the public security officers. The village party secretary and the production team leader also led a group of villagers up the mountain to search for you. I hurried ahead. They will be here any moment." There were public security officers too? "The public security officers are Lao Yi. Have you found anything?" Gu Jiyu's words were cut short. Huang Jiangwo and the village party secretary had arrived. You too." Huang Jiangwo stammered when he saw the man and woman standing before him. His gaze drifted downwards and landed on their clasped hands. Gu Jiyu followed his eyes and noticed their hands intertwined. She had pulled his hand off her head but forgotten to let go, and now their hands were gripped tightly together. Gu Jiyu hastily pulled her hand free and shot Yi Jiyu a sharp glare. She did not need to guess. Yi Jiyu must have done it on purpose. He had to have known other people were approaching. Now that the village party secretary had witnessed the scene, Gu Jiyu felt as if her single life was coming to an end. Beneath everyone's stares and Gu Jiyu's furious glower, Yi Jiyu remained perfectly calm and composed. If he wanted to win a wife, he could not afford to care about saving face. Besides, Gu Jiyu did not dislike him. She had been the one to initiate the hand hold in the first place. He had merely taken the opportunity and not reminded her. Yi Jiyu spoke with complete self-assurance. "Team leader, Secretary, De Huang. I've found her. We can see that for ourselves." The village party secretary and production team leader looked away from their hands and exchanged a glance. "Lao Yi. Damn you. Don't you dare call me De Huang." Huang Jiangwo's face turned green then purple. Yi Jiyu then introduced him to Gu Jiyu. "This is the public security officer I told you about, my friend Huang Jiangwo. You can call him De Huang." Gu Jiyu was stunned by that nickname. To tell the truth, the dog belonging to Aunt Yu, her neighbor, was named De Huang. Huang Jiangwo forced a stiff smile. He could hear people nearby stifling snickers. "Comrade Gu, the educated youth, don't listen to him. I'm several years older than you. You may call me Brother Huang." Huang Jiangwo shot Yi Jiyu a sharp side, long glance and huffed. "Just you wait." Gu Jiyu skipped past the banter. "Comrade, how many public security officers have come in total?" At her question, Huang Jiangwo's expression turned serious. "5 of us in all." "Now, tell me what has happened to you." Gu Jiyu pointed toward a distant cave. 2 men who kidnapped me are inside. They have passed out. I tied them up and left them there." 2 men. "But according to the clues we found, there ought to be 3 kidnappers," Huang Jiangwo pointed out. Gu Jiyu nodded with a faint smile. "That is right, there were 3. One went to the county town. He mentioned someone called Master Huang and planned to sell me off. From what he said, he will likely return tonight. Luckily you are here. We can catch all of them in one go." Yi Jiyu's face darkened when he heard this. "You are still smiling. You knew more of them were coming, yet you did not head down the mountain. What would you have done if we had not found you? Do you understand how much danger you were in? Can you imagine how worried we would have been if something terrible had happened to you?" Gu Jiyu paid no mind to his sharp, anxious tone. "I had the weapon you gave me, and I also had my ace in the hole." She pulled the fountain pen Yi Jiyu had given her out from her sleeve and waved it in front of his eyes. Then she twisted open a small paper packet from inside it. "This powder is a very useful self-defense tool." Yi Jiyu was rendered speechless. So he had unwittingly supplied her with the means to handle the situation herself. While the 2 of them talked, Huang Jiangwo took the village party secretary and went to fetch the rest of their group. The search parties were not spread very far apart, and everyone was quickly assembled. They all gathered before the cave. Seeing Gu Jiyu safe and sound, the villagers breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Thank goodness you are all right, Comrade Gu." "Indeed. Don't ever go off alone again." Those men dared to abduct you right under our noses. They show no respect for our production brigade. Where are those criminals? Let us teach them a good lesson. Group of sturdy farmers surrounded her, their concern genuine. They rolled up their sleeves, burning with anger, ready to beat the culprits. All their worry, urgency, and rage vanished the instant they laid eyes on the two men inside the cave. Yes, two men lay there. Gu Jiu had no professional knot-tying skills. She had only bound them with rope, leaving their limbs barely mobile. Well, the crook with the crew cut could not move his hands at all. Comrade Gu. Huang Jiangwo gaped, then turned toward Gu Jiu. In the glow of the kerosene lamp, her face somehow looked faintly intimidating. The two captives were in a sorry state, their stomachs marked with multiple boot prints. Gu Jiu handed the paper packet over to Huang Jiangwo. These are the men. While they were asleep, I untied my own restraints and slipped this powder on them. What kind of powder is this? Huang Jiangwo lifted the packet, about to sniff it, when Yi Jiu's hand blocked him. Yi Jiu snatched the packet out of his grasp and tapped him hard on the head. Are you foolish? You want to sniff some unknown powder? Look at what it did to those two on the ground. Hey! The village party secretary and production team leader stretched out their hands, then drew them back. They wanted to say why not to strike a public security officer. Yet, thinking about how recklessly Huang Jiangwo had acted, they felt the knock had been well-deserved. Besides, they were friends, a light tap was nothing. Yi, the educated youth, had even picked up some colorful local turns of phrase. The grown men all pretended not to notice and looked away. Huang Jiangwo shook off his daze and quickly collected himself. I was just curious, I meant no harm. Rest assured, I will not make such a careless mistake again. Satisfied by his earnest promise, Yi Jiu gave the packet back to him and turned to Gu Jiu. You, what exactly is this powder? Gu Jiu felt helpless. Could he not keep his voice down with so many people watching? Yi Jiu looked straight at her. Everyone already saw us holding hands. Are you going to take responsibility for that? His gaze made Gu Jiu feel even more exasperated. How could he act so innocent about what had just happened? Still, she had to answer his question. She ignored him and spoke to Huang Jiangwo. It is a sleeping powder I mixed myself. It takes effect when sprinkled on someone's face. Keep it, it may prove useful tonight. Sleeping powder? Such things really existed. Huang Jiangwo had always thought sleeping powder only appeared in storybooks. He certainly had never seen any in real life. Time slipped by. It was nearly 2 o'clock in the morning. Looking at the crowd gathered at the cave, Huang Jiangwo gave his orders. Secretarily, take the villagers back down the mountain. There are too many people here. Bring these two captives with you. He turned to Gu Jiu. Comrade Gu, you and Lao Yi go down the mountain as well. My men and I will stay here and wait for the third man and his accomplices. They may be armed. It is too dangerous for you to remain. Very well, we will head back. Knowing public security officers were on site to handle things, Gu Jiu readily agreed. The large group began their long trek down the mountain. Villagers carried the two human traffickers between them. Gu Jiu, Yi Jiu, the village party secretary and the production team leader walked at the rear. Glancing at the dozen people ahead, Gu Jiu spoke to the two cadres. Secretary, team leader, thank you for organizing so many people to search for me. I have put you to a great deal of trouble. The village party secretary walked downhill with his hands behind his back. Now that Gu Jiu was safe, his urgency had faded. Child, there is no need for such polite words. I would have done the same for anyone else. The production team leader added, that is right, do not trouble yourself over it. We are just glad you came through unharmed. Otherwise, young Yi here would have been beside himself with worry. Teased by Yan Weiman's tone, Gu Jiu's cheeks grew warm and she glared at Yi Jiu again. This was all his fault. Team leader, let us drop that subject. Many villagers lost work time coming up the mountain to look for me. I would like to compensate them. No need for that. I already arranged for work points to be recorded for everyone who joined the search. That is how our brigade handles such incidents. You need not concern yourself. Gu Jiu said no more. Since it was brigade custom, she would find another way to show her gratitude. She watched her footing on the mountain path, thinking about Master Huang, as the village party secretary spoke once more. Little Gu, I had no idea things had progressed this far between you and young Yi. When did this start? I thought you were still too young to be courting. Gu Jiu's mouth twitched. Neither had she expected to be publicly paired off out of nowhere. Yan Weiman joined in the teasing. Exactly. You two kept it so well hidden. If we had not seen you holding hands, we would never have guessed. I always thought Young Yi kept all women at arm's length, yet the moment he heard you were in danger, he ran faster than a wolf was chasing him. Gu Jiyu lifted an eyebrow and looked toward Yi Jiyu. Was that really true? Caught off guard by her gaze, Yi Jiyu grew flustered and turned his face away. Gu Jiyu meant to explain the misunderstanding to the village party secretary, but a flash of red caught her eye. Due to their height difference, all she saw as he turned away was his ear. It was bright crimson, striking against his fair skin. Staring at his profile, she thought it rather endearing. She had never seen a tall man of over 180 centimeters blush so fiercely around the ears. Little Gu, you ought to rest at home for the next few days. Those traffickers have set their sights on you. It is far too risky. Stay indoors until things calm down. Your health is not the best anyway. No one will criticize you for skipping work. Very well, thank you, Secretary. That suited Gu Jiyu perfectly. Skipping labor duty was hardly a hardship. We can give Young Yi a few days off too, to keep you company and guard against further mishaps. I was worrying about you staying alone in the educated youth compound. This works out perfectly. What do you say, Young Yi? Yi Jiyu could not have wished for a better arrangement. He cared little about lost work points. I am fine with it, though it depends on Comrade Gu. Gu Jiyu rolled her eyes inwardly. What a show of false modesty. Still, she did not refuse. Yes, Secretary, that does make things safer. Then it is settled. Yan Weimin finalized the decision. Yu Jiyu's eyes lit up when Gu Jiyu did not turn the proposal down. Does that mean she is open to me? Gu Jiyu huffed and avoided his burning gaze. Yu Jiyu's mouth stretched into a wide grin. He secretly stretched out a finger to brush against her hand. Their fingertips barely touched before Gu Jiyu noticed. She stared at his sneaky hand, then at his perfectly innocent expression. He was such a contradictory sight. Even so, she did not pull away. Sensing her acquiescence, Yi Jiyu's lips curved. He kept moving his hand until their little fingers hooked together. Gu Jiyu was completely baffled. Where had all his boldness from earlier gone? Now he was acting like a schoolboy playing silly finger games. She pulled her hand free, then before Yi Jiyu could react, she laced her fingers tightly through his. Their hands locked palm to palm. She tilted her chin up, looking smug at his stunned expression. What are you staring at, coward? Yi Jiyu said nothing, only squeezed her hand tighter, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She was so easy to rattle. The village party secretary and production team leader saw the whole exchange and said nothing, watching on with fond amusement. Young love was a lovely thing to behold. It was very late by the time they returned to the village. The two human traffickers were locked inside a room in the brigade headquarters. The villagers who had gone up the mountain headed home, needing to eat before going to work. Work points meant grain rations. They could not afford to waste them. Once the captives were secured, the accountant was told to keep watch, and everyone dispersed for breakfast. Climbing the mountain had exhausted them all. Unlike Gu Jiyu, who could sneak food from her private stores, they had worked up fierce appetites. You two go on home. I will send someone to fetch you when the public security officers get back, the village party secretary instructed them. Gu Jiyu and Yi Jiyu walked side by side toward the educated youth compound. Their hands had parted on the way down the hill. Gu Jiyu had firmly pulled free of Yi Jiyu's reluctant grasp, stepping 2 paces away from him to avoid drawing more attention. It was a futile attempt at discretion. Oh no! After walking a short distance, Gu Jiyu slapped her forehead, remembering something important. What is wrong? Are you hurt? Yi Jiyu panicked, grabbing her wrist and trying to drag her toward the village clinic. We need Dr. Wang to look at you right away. Gu Jiyu held him back. Calm down, I am not injured. Yi Jiyu did not dare pull too hard for fear of making her fall, his face full of worry. Then what is the matter? I just remembered that third man took my wristwatch. I forgot to tell the public security officers to retrieve it for me. Only that. Yi Jiyu let out a relieved breath. Once they catch him, your property will be recovered. Come on, let us get you back. Gu Jiyu kept walking. Yi Jiyu stayed 2 steps beside her, accompanying her slowly home. Ayu? Ayu. What is it? Ayu. Speak if you have something to say. Why keep calling my name over and over? Annoyed, Gu Jiyu's tone grew sharp. Nothing. I just wanted to say your name. Can you even hear yourself? If you keep calling me for no reason, I will lose my temper. Gu Jiyu bared her teeth and threatened him. One more call and there would be trouble. Yi Jiyu glanced at her glinting teeth and flinched slightly. I am just happy. Ayu, does this mean you agree to be with me? I do not. Gu Jiu retorted sharply. She had not agreed to anything. He had tricked her. If he had not been so good-looking, he would have ended up like the kidnapped criminal back in the cave. Yu Jiu turned serious. But the secretary and all the villagers saw us holding hands. If you refuse me now, people will say you led me on. I am not the sort of man who flirts casually. Gu Jiu's joy tightened at his absurd reasoning. Yu Jiu wore an earnest, impassioned expression. Comrade Gu Jiu, I have never been close to any young woman before. You are the first. You cannot cast me aside. How will I ever find another partner? Everyone will say I behaved improperly. My reputation is ruined. You must take responsibility for me. Reputation, innocence, taking responsibility. Listening to him, anyone would think they had done far more than merely hold hands. As far as I recall, we only held hands. Yu Jiu stared straight ahead. No, it is not merely holding hands. Holding hands without courting is improper behavior. You could get reported for it. So that means we are courting, right? He had circled right back to his goal. Gu Jiu took a deep breath. Is this a threat? Yu Jiu shook his head. Not a threat. If you deny our relationship, everyone will think I acted improperly. I am begging you, not threatening you. Gu Jiu stared at his over-earnest act, utterly exasperated. This was nothing like his usual gentle, refined demeanor. It had all been an illusion. He was all shine and no substance. She cut him off. Enough of the performance. Let us get this straight. I am 16, still underage. We can have a trial period. If you pass, once I turn 18, we can officially be together. If things do not work out, we go our separate ways. A trial period? Yu Jiu had never heard such a phrase. Gu Jiu slipped up with modern terminology and rephrased. It means we can get to know each other first. Stay together if it works, split up if it does not. It will definitely work out, Yu Jiu thought to himself, but he kept it to himself. Very well. What should we say to other people? Gu Jiu rolled her eyes openly. Quit pretending. I understand. Yu Jiu nodded. We will tell everyone we are courting. Should I pass out candies to announce our relationship? He was not even bothering to pretend anymore. As she unlocked the door to the compound, Gu Jiu warned him. Behave yourself. Do not go spreading gossip. If you make trouble, your trial period ends early. Gu Jiu was coming to realize this young man was incorrigible, always stirring up mischief at the most inopportune moments. If they didn't keep it under wraps, Gu Jiu figured it wouldn't even take till tomorrow before even the old village ox would know they were together. Everyone who'd gone up the mountain today had already seen them holding hands, but she still felt awkward if word got out from Yu Jiu's mouth. Just imagining that scene made Gu Jiu cringe with embarrassment. A person could die, but they must not die from social mortification. Yu Jiu readily agreed to Gu Jiu's request. He'd worked so hard to get this partner, so he had to treat her well. His mother had always said a man who listens to his wife would go far. Besides, Ayu had mentioned he was still in some sort of probationary phase, so he needed to perform well. Ayu, are you hungry? I'll cook for you. Right after Yu Jiu spoke, before Gu Jiu could answer, his stomach rumbled loudly. A flush spread across Yu Jiu's cheeks. I skipped lunch, so I'm a little hungry. Gu Jiu bit back a smile. He blushed so easily. She opened the cupboard and took out the leftover food from that morning, setting it on the table. She didn't eat much normally, so she never cooked large portions. Leftover were only a bowl of congee, 1 egg, half a steamed bun, and a small plate of her homemade pickled vegetables. Have this to tide you over. I broke off this piece of bun, I never bit it. I'd eat it even if you had bitten it. I'm not picky. Yu Jiu washed his hands and sat down at the table, picking up the half-steamed bun. What about you? Aren't you hungry? He remembered Gu Jiu hadn't eaten either. If she gave all this to him, what would she have? Gu Jiu went back inside and fetched a pack of crisp peach cakes, pouring herself a cup of warm water. I'll just have 1 peach cake. We'll have proper dinner later. She took 1 cake out and pushed the rest toward him. You have some too. Yu Jiu didn't hesitate. After finishing what was on the table, he took another peach cake. That little food only took the edge off his hunger. It was far from filling. He quickly finished the second cake and got up to wash the dishes. As he scrubbed the bowls, Yu Jiu's thoughts wandered. He actually had a partner now. He'd even eaten a meal inside her house. The savings he'd stashed away finally had a purpose. He planned to go check his savings and hand them over to Gu Jiu as a sincere gesture. After all, the wife ought to manage the household money. As for Gu Jiu's so-called probation period, he paid it no mind. Pleased now that he got her, He wasn't about to let her slip away. After drying and putting away the dishes, Yijiu told Gujiu he would come back later to make dinner, then left to change clothes. He reeked of sweat. He could ignore it while working, but now that he was resting, it bothered him. Especially in front of his new partner, he needed to maintain a decent appearance. He hadn't missed how Gujiu had stared at his face several times. Looks were an advantage, and he knew he was handsome. Few men around could compare to him. He had to make the most of that asset. His new partner didn't seem entirely immune to good-looking faces, so he had to take good care of his appearance. Yijiu was already mentally planning to buy more vanishing cream for his skin. Gujiu, unaware Yijiu had pegged her as someone easily swayed by good looks, changed into fresh clothes and lay on the king, going over everything that had happened that day. Bad things. First, she'd only delivered 1 basket of pigweed and hadn't finished her work point quota for the day. Second, she'd been kidnapped by human traffickers and had her face touched. Third, she still hadn't figured out a safe way to take her durian out and eat it. Good things first, since she'd missed today's quota, she wouldn't be assigned tasks for the next several days. Second, though she'd been captured by traffickers, she'd found the cave marked on the map and gained a large cache of valuables. Third, the traffickers had been caught, which might earn her another merit. Fourth, she had a new, good-looking boyfriend. Having a boyfriend could tentatively count as a good thing. All in all, she'd gotten quite a lot out of the day. Still, getting a boyfriend had come completely out of the blue. Gujiu admitted she was easygoing, appreciated good-looking people, and spoke her mind. But Yijiu had sort of trapped her into this relationship, acting as if she had no wits of her own, and that had been a bit much. What exactly were Yijiu's merits? He was just good-looking, tall, well-built, and kept to himself. What else did he have going for him? Family circumstances? Seemed decent. Personality? Gentle and caring toward those close to him, tough toward outsiders. Qinjian, to be honest, the definition of those close to him is a bit broad looking at it that way. Getting together with him wasn't a bad deal. As for his family, Gujiu didn't care much. She felt confident enough that if she ran into the village leader, she would walk right up to him and bow politely. Either way, Gujiu had enough confidence to build a good life for herself. It was just a romantic relationship. She could give it a try. She wasn't scared. If they got along, they stayed together. If not, they parted ways. Having thought over her new partner, Gujiu pushed the matter aside. Her gaze fell on the durians in her spatial storage, and she looked utterly miserable. A small pile of durian sat in one corner of the space, with one open durian set off to the side. If time didn't stand still and air didn't circulate inside the storage, everything else she kept there would have been steeped in durian odor. She had to hand it to the system. Those durians had an authentic, powerful smell. Gujiu mostly stayed home except for mountain trips and work assignments. She never wasted time eating while out in the hills, so she rarely got a chance to open a durian. There had been one exception. That day, Gooden and the other kids had offered to finish cutting her pigweed so she could carry it down slowly. She'd thought she had plenty of time and figured the smell would disperse outdoors, so she decided to treat herself to durian. But right after she cracked it open and took one bite, she heard Gooden shouting from a distance. "Sister Gu, are you relieving yourself out there? Do you need paper? I'll send Sonia over with some." Gujiu froze completely on the spot. She felt like she could crumble away in the wind. Could the smell really carry that far, even from where she'd hidden? "Sister Gu, I'm fine." With Gooden calling out like that, there was no way she could keep eating. If she went back now, the kids would spread rumors she'd been doing something disgusting out in the woods. Gujiu quickly stowed the durian back into her space. She pulled out her canteen, carefully washed her hands, and rinsed her mouth repeatedly, making sure no trace of the scent clung to her before she walked back. Better people thought she'd had stomach trouble than that she'd been eating something weird out in the open. One suggested bodily discomfort, the other would make people think she'd lost her mind. She knew full well which was worse. When she got back, a group of children gathered around to show their concern. Their well-meant remarks were painfully straightforward. "Sister Gu, did you eat something bad? You should take better care of your body. Don't eat random things." "Yeah, whatever you ate must have been terrible to smell that bad." Gujiu could only force a smile and reassure them over and over until the earnest children finally left her alone. After that incident, she never dared eat durian outdoors again. Even thinking back on it made her want to hide from embarrassment. Since then, Gujiu had longed for durian yet could never find a good moment to enjoy it. She sighed as she lay on the quilt. If only there was some place like the Educated Youth Compound that was empty in the afternoons. Wait a minute. The Educated Youth Compound was empty in the afternoons. Gu Jiu shot upright and her vision swam. She pressed a hand to her forehead to steady herself. Even modern college students would probably suffer the same dizzy spells with this frail body. Once her sight cleared, she realized her oversight. She'd worried about durian odor in the Educated Youth Compound. Yet forgotten she was practically alone there every afternoon. All that time she'd spent agonizing over this. And the solution had been right under her nose. But she couldn't go there for the next couple of days. The party secretary had given her brand new partner 2 days off. Now she practically had a personal shadow following her around. Gu Jiu stared at the durians in her storage, almost drooling with longing. Just wait a couple more days. I'll get to you soon. Another matter weighed on her mind. A lot of villagers had gone up the mountain searching for her that day. The production brigade had issued work points for them, but she still felt she ought to show some gratitude. She just wasn't sure what gifts to give. Giving nothing would be rude, but overly expensive gifts would also be inappropriate. Gu Jiu counted, excluding the party secretary and the brigade leader, 13 villagers had joined the search. She'd been in Tuanjia Brigade for over 2 months. Though she rarely went out, she had a good memory and knew most people in the village. She recognized all 13 searchers, and none of them belonged to the same household. She could give every household the same small gift and give something extra to the 2 cadres. Digging through her spatial storage, she settled on half a liang of tobacco shreds and a bar of soap for each ordinary household. For the party secretary and brigade leader, she would give 1 full liang of tobacco shreds and a scented soap bar. The gifts weren't overly valuable, and she could distinguish the cadre's presents from the rest. She wrapped and tied each portion neatly and set them in a carrying basket, planning to drop the basket off at the brigade office soon. She had just set the basket aside when someone knocked at her door. Gu Jiu glanced at the door, then at the packed basket. Had he timed his arrival perfectly? If he'd come a little earlier, he could have helped her with the work. Even so, she went over and opened the door to let him in. Yu Jiu stepped inside and spotted the basket on the floor with all its wrapped parcels. Are you preparing gifts for someone? Gu Jiu nodded. Yes. So many people climbed the mountain looking for me today. The brigade leader said they'll get work points, but I still feel I ought to thank them. Yu Jiu looked at the bundles, his brows drawing slightly together. Each parcel looked small, but added up they were quite a lot. If she gave away so much, would she have enough supplies left for herself? You're giving away so much. Will you still have enough for your own use? Let me bring some things over for you. He turned to leave, looking ready to haul over half his household's belongings. Gu Jiu hurried to hold him back. I'm the one thanking them. It wouldn't make sense for you to contribute gifts. She pushed him onto a stool and poured him a cup of water. They'd only just started dating, and he was already ready to empty his stores. He seemed sharp normally, but romance had clearly addled his brain. She believed in returning kindness, but she didn't want to accept large gifts from him. I'm not giving away anything extravagant. Just tobacco shreds and soap. My mom sent the tobacco shreds when I came down to the countryside, and I bought the soap myself. It won't cost much. Besides, keep your things for yourself. I have everything I need. Tobacco shreds? Yu Jiu thought that made sense. The gifts weren't costly, and the brigade had already rewarded work points, so this was just the right token of thanks. Still, something she'd said rankled him. Why did she say he ought to keep his things for himself? Now that he had a partner, shouldn't his things be hers too? Hey, you, that's not right. We're dating now, aren't we? Gu Jiu nodded. Sort of. Yu Jiu ignored the sort of. If we're dating, my things are your things. Why shouldn't you use them? Gu Jiu stared at him, caught off guard by his earnest attitude. You're still in the probationary period, remember, she gently reminded him. Yu Jiu brushed that off. A partner in probation is still a partner. What's wrong with you using some of my stuff? Fine, fine. Gu Jiu gestured in surrender, acting as if she would go along with whatever he said. I don't lack supplies right now. You can hold on to them for me. If I ever need something, I'll ask you, okay? Yu Jiu saw she was being half-hearted, but nodded anyway. Progress had been made. Even if she wouldn't take his things right now, he would keep offering them. After that topic died down, they sat on stools facing each other, silence stretching between them. Gu Jiu glanced around, growing uncomfortable with the quiet. Yu Jiu looked up and down the room. It was his first time alone indoors with a girl he liked, and he felt nervous. Two total beginners at romance sat there for nearly 10 minutes, neither knowing what to say. They would occasionally meet eyes, then quickly look away. Both of their faces grew red. Gu Jiu felt as if the stool had nails sticking out of it. The room felt warm, and she fanned her cheeks lightly with her hand. Across from her, Yi Jiu watched her blushing face. His heart pounded wildly. She was so lovely. Even the way she fanned herself seemed charming. His nervousness melted away as he watched her. Gu Jiu was far from oblivious to his intense gaze. It felt like the air had grown thin. Finally, she could not stand it any longer and glared at him. "What are you staring at? You always have so much to say normally. Why are you quiet now, just watching me?" There was amusement in Yi Jiu's voice as he looked at her flustered expression. "This is my first time having a partner. Being alone with a girl I like, especially one this pretty. Of course I want to look. I thought you wouldn't mind. After all, you've stared at my face quite a few times too. I figured everyone appreciates good-looking features." Gu Jiu's retort got stuck in her throat. It was true, she had stared at his good-looking face. Annoying man. Yi Jiu saw she was getting genuinely flustered. He knew better than to tease her further, so he backed off. "I'll stop staring. Anyway, it's getting late. What should we have for dinner?" "I'll cook." Gu Jiu let the matter drop. She couldn't really argue, since she had indeed stared at him. "You're going to cook?" She eyed him skeptically. "How good are your cooking skills?" She'd only heard Qin Zhan say Yi Jiu cooked for him. She had never tasted his food, so she had no idea how it turned out. If it was terrible, she would rather skip it. Yi Jiu caught her doubt. "It's not as good as yours, but it's edible. You can stand nearby and guide me, so I can improve and cook for you more often later." Edible was a very low bar. It basically meant it wouldn't poison you. Still, his idea sounded reasonable. She had even taught the completely inexperienced Yulina how to cook, so someone with some basic skill like Yi Jiu ought to be fine. "I haven't decided what to make. Let's go check the vegetable garden first." Gu Jiu led Yi Jiu toward her small garden. Passing through the inner room, she spotted the clothes she'd changed off lying on the king. Her face flushed, and she quickly gathered them and tossed them into a lidded woven basket. "I took those off earlier and forgot to put them away. I'll wash them tomorrow." She wasn't messy, she'd just forgotten. Yi Jiu nodded and kept walking toward the garden. He'd thought about offering to wash her clothes for her, but decided it would be overstepping, so he said nothing. He focused on picking vegetables from the garden, watching his back as he selected produce. Gu Jiu's embarrassment faded. It was only outer clothes, nothing private. There was no need to be so flustered. She walked over to join him. "Come pick what we should eat." Yi Jiu stared at the abundant vegetables, paralyzed by choices. There were plenty of options, but he couldn't guess which ones Gu Jiu preferred. When he saw her approach, he waved her over. "Coming." Gu Jiu walked over. "Those tomatoes are ripe. Pick some for soup." "All right. Over there, those cherry radishes I planted. Gather a few for a cold salad." "Got it. And grab a handful of long beans. Stir, fry them with lard. Does that sound good?" Yi Jiu had no complaints. "I'm fine with anything, I'm not picky." Gu Jiu went back to fetch a small basket to hold the vegetables. "That settles it. I still have some cured pork, so I can make steamed cured pork rice." At the mention of steamed cured pork rice, Yi Jiu hesitated. "I know you usually eat plain rice. You don't have to use the cured meat. Save it for yourself and eat it little by little." Gu Jiu waved her hand. "It's fine, let's eat it. The weather will keep getting hotter, and it won't keep well. This is the last of it, so we might as well finish it." Yi Jiu thought for a moment and agreed. "All right, go ahead and make it. Cured meat wouldn't stay good for long." He would buy her fresh pork later. After picking a small basket of vegetables, the two returned to the kitchen. Gu Jiu handed an apron to Yi Jiu for him to put on. Yi Jiu stood still, staring at the apron in her hand and did not move. "What are you daydreaming about? Put it on quickly." Gu Jiu placed the apron in Yi Jiu's hands, a hint of amusement in her voice. Yi Jiu looked at the apron in his hands, then at the smiling Gu Jiu. Helplessly, he tied the small pink floral apron around himself. "Ha ha." Seeing Yi Jiu in the apron, Gu Jiu could not hold back her laughter. There was a big difference in their builds. Yi Jiu was over 180 centimeters tall. Tall and slender, yet solid with muscle. Gu Jiu was the complete opposite. She was just over 160 centimeters, thin and frail from years of poor health. The apron fit her perfectly, but on Yi Jiu it looked utterly ridiculous. To Gu Jiu, it was like Lu Bu wearing Diao Chan's dress. It simply did not fit him at all. Watching Gu Jiu laugh until tears nearly came to her eyes, Yi Jiu felt utterly helpless. He knew full well what a little trickster she was, always thinking up ways to tease people. All right, stop laughing or you'll end up with a stomach ache, Yi Jiu directed her. Go get the cured pork and let's start steaming the rice. Still chuckling, Gu Jiu bent down to search under the cupboard. It really suits you, I'm not lying. Yi Jiu did not know what to say. I get it. Which basin should I use to wash the rice? Gu Jiu calmed her laughter, took out the cured pork, grabbed a basin and passed it to him. Use this one. I'll wash and slice the meat. One washed the rice while the other cut the meat, and the atmosphere between them was warm and harmonious. Yu Jiu worked quickly. Before the meat was fully sliced, the rice was already in the pot. He also fetched firewood and lit the stove. Glancing over, he saw Gu Jiu was almost done cutting the meat. He picked up the rice, washing basin, and went to clean the vegetables. Gu Jiu laid the sliced cured pork evenly over the rice, covered the pot lid, and walked over to watch Yi Jiu wash vegetables. She was not sure how skilled he was at cooking, but for now his movements were neat and efficient. Gu Jiu checked the vegetables he had washed. They were spotlessly clean, with not a speck of dirt left. Nice work. Thumbs up for you. Gu Jiu gave him a thumbs up. Yi Jiu did not lift his head. Thank you, Comrade Gu. I'll finish washing these vegetables soon. Could you get the seasonings ready so we can mix the cold dish next? Gu Jiu turned toward the inner room. Got it, Comrade Yi. I'll have the seasonings ready right away. Seasonings were simple in these times. There was no chicken essence, oyster sauce, light soy sauce, or dark soy sauce. Gu Jiu brought out the few seasonings she planned to use for the cold dish: fine salt, MSG, soy sauce, and most importantly, a small bottle of sesame oil. Sesame oil was extremely hard to come by. She had visited the supply and marketing cooperative several times without success. The sesame oil she used now came from System Check in rewards, which she pretended to have bought from the cooperative. Gu Jiu loved cold dishes in summer, and they never tasted quite right without sesame oil. She was fortunate to have the system looking after her, supplying her daily necessities. Otherwise, she would have struggled to get by in this era of scarcity. Setting the seasonings on the table, she grabbed 2 heads of garlic and started peeling them. It was not that she had heavy tastes, but beans and cold dishes simply did not taste good without garlic. Oh right. Putting down the garlic, she fetched some white sugar. Shredded radish salad always tasted better with a little sugar. When Yi Jiu carried the vegetables in, Gu Jiu was busily peeling garlic. Glancing at the items spread across the table, Yi Jiu sighed. Comrade Gu, you really do have quite the collection of seasonings. Good food needs good seasonings, Gu Jiu replied matter-of-factly. That was true. Yi Jiu nodded. Well, stalked Comrade Gu. How do you plan to prepare this radish? Shredded or sliced? Peeling garlic had left Gu Jiu's fingernails stinging. Neither. These radishes are small. Just cut them in half and smash them with a knife, then toss them with seasonings. It tastes wonderful. Yi Jiu had never tried that method. Then I'm eager to taste how good it really is. Go ahead and try it, you'll be surprised, Gu Jiu murmured, then said aloud. Make sure to add white sugar, that's the secret ingredient. Oh. He had thought the sugar was for making sweet water, not for cold salad. Yi Jiu set the basin on the table, took a large bowl from the cupboard and started smashing the radishes. The smashed radishes filled most of the bowl. Next he cut up the beans and several tomatoes. Finishing chopping, he plucked 2 green onions and diced them. Gu Jiu had just rinsed her hands to soothe the stinging in her fingernails. She turned and saw Yi Jiu chopping ingredients earnestly. The man was genuinely handy around the kitchen, and the pink floral apron on him made for quite a sight. Seeing how capable he was at cooking, having a boyfriend was not such a bad thing. Gu Jiu fetched a handful of dried chili peppers to fry with the long beans she had picked. Frying them dry with chili and minced garlic would be perfect. By the time all the ingredients were prepped, the rice was nearly done. Gu Jiu watched Yi Jiu finish mixing the cold radish salad. He picked up chopsticks, tasted a bite, added a little more sugar and sesame oil, and tossed it again. He then picked up a piece and held it out to Gu Jiu's mouth. Try this. Gu Jiu glanced at him and ate the radish. It does taste really good. She frowned slightly. There was something odd about his tone, though she could not put her finger on it. She picked up another piece with the same chopsticks and tasted it herself. The flavor was excellent. Why had he sounded strange? Gu Jiu chewed thoughtfully, holding the chopsticks in her mouth. The chopsticks. It dawned on her. She had just fed him with her chopsticks, and then she had used those very same chopsticks to eat. They had shared the same pair of chopsticks. That explained his odd tone. It was practically an indirect kiss. Gu Jiu slapped the chopsticks down on the table and looked up at Yi Jiu, meeting his amused eyes. Seeing that she had realized what had happened, Yi Jiu teased, "Tastes great, doesn't it?" Gu Jiu's face flushed bright red. It was not so much the shared chopsticks that flustered her, but the man sitting in front of her. He was strikingly handsome, smiling gently, his eyes bright, and the mole beneath his eye looked especially captivating. Gu Jiu's heart raced. She really could not resist when he turned on that charm. Anyone would be swayed by such good-looking features. She herself had always been considered pretty, and she had thought she had built up decent resistance to good looks. But in front of him, all that resistance crumbled away completely. She forced herself to speak. "Dish out the rice, then you can start stir-frying." She hurried into the inner room. She needed to get away before she lost her composure. She had only just started dating him. She ought to keep some reserve. She might admire good-looking men, but she must not be too forward. That was her bottom line. Watching Gu Jiu's flustered retreating figure, Yi Jiu touched his own cheek. He was grateful to his parents for giving him this face. Perhaps it would help him win his wife in the end. His little girlfriend was utterly adorable, especially when she blushed. Yi Jiu felt so happy he almost wanted to sing, though he was not much of a singer. He held back his joy and got on with serving rice and washing the wok. You. Gu Jiu was berating herself inwardly for getting so flustered when she heard Yi Jiu call from the kitchen. What is it? She calmed her emotions and went back out. Yi Jiu wanted to spend more time with her, so he avoided bringing up the earlier incident, afraid of making her too shy. How should I cook these beans? Show me and I'll do it. Relieved he had not mentioned the indirect kiss, Gu Jiu felt a little embarrassed about how flustered she had grown over him. She took the spatula, scooped a lump of lard from the jar and dropped it into the wok, letting it melt over the heat. Fry the chili and minced garlic to release the aroma, then add the beans. Fry them without adding water. That brings out the best flavor, Gu Jiu instructed. Yi Jiu followed her directions. Soon a rich fragrance filled the air, mixing the aroma of beans, spicy chili, and garlic. Without slow, simmered dishes, the meal came together quickly. They sat down at the table ready to eat before 5:30. Gu Jiu knew the time because Yi Jiu wore a wristwatch. They had prepared 2 dishes, one simple soup and steamed rice, more than enough for the 2 of them. Yi Jiu picked up his chopsticks and put some beans into Gu Jiu's bowl. Try this, made under Comrade Gu's guidance. Gu Jiu rolled her eyes. Just eat your food. Still, the beans turned out really well. She had only told him the method, and he had handled the heat perfectly. Not bad at all. Now I see why Qin Zhan has put on a little weight even with all the hard rural labor. Our comrade Yi is quite the cook. Yi Jiu swallowed his mouthful of rice. You flatter me, Comrade Gu. It's all your good instruction. You are being too modest. The dish speaks for itself. No, it cannot compare to your cooking by any measure. Quit the compliments. Gu Jiu rolled her eyes again, then asked, but what about your good friend Qin Zhan, now that you're eating here? Yi Jiu kept eating without pause. It's fine. He's learning to cook lately, he won't starve. Qin Zhan can cook? Gu Jiu's eyes widened in surprise. Is it even edible? She remembered once smelling burnt smoke coming from Yi Jiu's room. When she went over, Qin Zhan had been attempting to stir-fry. And whatever was in the wok was charred beyond recognition.